Chapter 2554. Look at what you're saying. Can't I come to see you? Lu Xingyang said discontentedly. I've been in the Divine Prefecture for so long. But you haven't come to see me. Now that the Hell of the Nether King has opened, you come to see me. Don't tell me that this is a coincidence. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Ahem. Lu Xingyang coughed and said with a smile. Of course, when I came to see you, I also wanted to tell you something. Something? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. He said speechlessly. I think you have something to tell me, so you came to see me on the way. You brat, can't you save me some face? Lu Xingyang glared at him angrily. See through but don't say it. Haven't you heard of this saying? Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Okay. Tell me. This unfilial descendant will listen to your teachings. Ahem. Lu Xingyang coughed and said, How much do you know about the Hell of the Nether King? Almost everything. And Yizhong personally told me that this is a conspiracy against me. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingyang said in surprise. Yizhong personally told you that? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Lu Xingyang frowned, then patted his head and said with a smile, Look at my brain. As soon as I saw you, I was so excited that I forgot that you are Li Buer now, Yizhong's disciple. I really couldn't tell that you were so excited. Qin Feiyang said lightly, What's with your belly full of complaints? Lu Xingyang looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. Qin Feiyang said, You know very well. Know what? Lu Xingyang frowned. Qin Feiyang took a sip of tea and said, There are some things that I really have to say. To be honest, I have a great prejudice against you and the ancestors. Lu Xingyang couldn't help but feel a little guilty. He smiled and said, What prejudice? First, you've taken all the people around me to the dragon-slaying palace. You've even sent people to take the demon ancestor and Dong Xingyang away. But you've left me alone. What's the meaning of this? Secondly, I've been in the Divine Land all these years. Have any of you come to see me? What I'm talking about is simply visiting me. The ancestor did appear, but that was because he had something to do. If there was nothing else, I probably wouldn't have shown up until now. Then there's no need to talk about you, old ancestor. If it weren't for the Underworld King, would you have come here? Qin Feiyang snorted. This? Lu Xingyang looked embarrassed. I think in your eyes, I'm not even as good as outsiders like Mu Tianyang. Qin Feiyang said. This? It's true that we neglected and didn't consider your feelings. Lu Xingyang smiled sheepishly. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and asked, Do you know why I've caused such a big commotion in the Divine Land time and time again? Why? Lu Xingyang looked at him suspiciously. I just want to attract your attention. For example, the fierce battle with Long Zun and the 6 ancestral dragons in the Internal Sea last time. Although it was to buy time for Fire Lotus and the others, it was also to attract your attention. In short, I'm just trying to make my presence known in front of you. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingyang couldn't help but fall silent when he heard this. He never expected Qin Feiyang to have such a side to him. After hearing these words, do you think I'm very pitiful? Do I have to deliberately make my presence known in front of my family? In fact, even I feel quite pitiful. No, that's humble. Qin Feiyang laughed self-deprecatingly. Lu Xingyang said apologetically, Feiyang, I'm sorry. We didn't think of this. We all thought I was very strong. Yes, I usually have an indifferent attitude. But no matter what, I'm still a person of flesh and blood, right? I can also taste the fickleness of human nature. I also know what loneliness and loss are. I'm not made of iron. I'm immune to all poisons. Even if I'm made of iron, there will be a day when I rust. Qin Feiyang said. Yes. Lu Xingyang nodded repeatedly. That's enough. Let's not talk about this. Otherwise, you'll sound like a resentful wife. I've already decided on the matter of the Nether King's hell. No matter how much you say, it's useless. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Do you really want to go in? What's the reason? Lu Xingyang frowned. Qin Feiyang said, I want to become stronger. Is this reason enough? There are many ways to become stronger. There's no need to go to the Nether King's hell. Lu Xingyang said. This is a shortcut. Although every step is dangerous, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Also, although I accepted the task you gave me, I did it for your sake, Not for the sake of the Dragon Slayer Palace. Don't force anything on me, Qin Feiyang said lightly. Force anything? Lu Xingyang was taken aback. For example, you want me to hand over the heaven-defying divine artifact? Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingyang's heart skipped a beat. This kid was really disgusted by these things. He couldn't help but worry. He and Qin Batian would definitely not do this. But it was hard to say what the other two sovereigns would do. If this matter wasn't handled properly, with this kid's character, he would probably wash his hands of it. He might even point his finger at the Dragon Slayer Palace. It seemed that he had to find another time to have a good talk with the other two sovereigns. Don't worry, they won't, Lu Xingyang said with a smile. It's best that they won't. Qin Feiyang had a smile on his face, and asked, Then I'll take you around the Black Tortoise world. Sure. Lu Xingyang nodded. Now he couldn't continue to persuade Qin Feiyang. Because of Qin Feiyang's words, it was he who felt guilty in his heart. He was thinking about how he could make up for what he owed this little fellow. In the next few days, Qin Feiyang took Lu Xingyang to various places in the Black Tortoise world. Looking at everything in the Black Tortoise world, Lu Xingyang was also amazed. The Black Tortoise world is what it is today, because of the Fire Lotus. On the peak of a mountain, Qin Feiyang glanced at the surrounding mountains and rivers, and said with a smile. Lu Xingyang said, It seems that you have deep feelings for the Fire Lotus. From knowing each other to knowing each other, until now, we've been through too much. Tell me the truth. My feelings for the Fire Lotus far exceed yours and ancestors, Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingyang said unhappily, Aren't you afraid that we'll be jealous? This is the truth. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Lu Xingyang felt helpless in his heart. He really didn't care about their feelings. By the way, ancestor, let Zhao Tailai and the others return to my side, Qin Feiyang said. Why? Lu Xingyang was stunned. Qin Feiyang said, There's no future if I follow you. What the hell? Say that again. Lu Xingyang raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang said, There's no future if I follow you. Lu Xingyang immediately said angrily, Boy, are you arrogant? Are you angry? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Lu Xingyang said, Of course, if it were you, wouldn't you be angry? But I'm telling the truth. First, the time array. The time array of the dragon-slaying palace is 50 years a day, but the time array of the Black Tortoise world and the ancient castle is 100 years a day. The difference is double. Next, the divine techniques and artifacts. There may be more divine techniques and artifacts in the dragon-slaying palace's treasury, but can you guarantee that you'll give them the best? You can't guarantee it, but I can. Finally, cultivation. The dragon-slaying palace must have many spirit veins and crystal veins, but I guess that they may not be comparable to what I have now, Qin Feiyang said with a confident smile. Hearing this, Lu Xingyang was speechless for a moment. You might say that you can also teach them the experience of entering the imperishable realm. But now, I have many imperishable realm cultivators with me. And I have 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Although they are divine artifacts, they should have more experience than us. So, in my opinion, if old Zhao and the others continue to stay in the dragon-slaying palace, they will only destroy their own future, Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, Lu Xingyang smiled bitterly. Of course, I'm also very grateful to you and the ancestor for taking care of them during this period, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You little brat. Lu Xingyang scolded with a smile and nodded. Okay, when I go back, I'll ask them to come to you. Thank you, ancestor. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. Lu Xingyang sized up Qin Feiyang, shook his head and said, That's not right. Your goal shouldn't be that simple, right? Purpose. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and said, They are all my companions. What purpose can I have for them? That's not what I mean. What I mean is you're doing it because of the mermaid princess, Lu Xingyang said. Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. I guessed right. If you want the mermaid princess to stay by your side, just say it, Lu Xingyang teased. That's one thing. Qin Feiyang smiled awkwardly. I say, since you like her, why don't you just marry her? Lu Xingyang was suspicious. Isn't it because I want to come to the ancient world to look for you and the ancestor? Otherwise, we would have been married long ago. Maybe we would have a lot of children by now. Qin Feiyang said. A lot of children. You're really not afraid of blushing when you talk. Lu Xingyang's face twitched, and he said, Do you mean that we're holding you back? Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded. Okay. I'll go back and discuss with your ancestor and the Mermaid Emperor to arrange your marriage. Lu Xingyang said. Don't. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. What do you mean? Lu Xingyang looked at him in confusion. I don't care how others get married, but when I get married, father, mother, grandfather, Uncle Yuan, and great-grandfather must be present. Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingyang said in surprise. I didn't know that you were so filial. You still can't tell? If I'm not filial, why would I come all the way to look for you and the ancestor? I finally realize now that I'm really stupid. Okay. Tomorrow, when Zhao Tailai and the others come back, I'll take them back to the great Qin. Qin Feiyang said sadly. Lu Xingyang rolled his eyes and said, Okay, don't talk nonsense. Send me out. But I hope you'll think about the matter of the Nether King's hell. Since I've decided, what's there to think about? Men should be more decisive and be more ruthless to themselves. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Bastard. Lu Xingyang glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grinned and sent Lu Xingyang out. Although a few days had passed in the Black Tortoise realm, only a short while had passed outside. Worried that Yi Zhong would discover him, Lu Xingyang immediately opened a teleportation altar and left as soon as he appeared in the sky above the Dragon God mountain range. Chapter 2555. Qin Feiyang also returned to the Devil's Land. As he left, seeing that only Qin Feiyang came back, Fire Lotus asked with a smile. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Fire Lotus thought for a while and asked curiously. Qin Dage, what you've done all these years, are you really trying to find a sense of existence? Don't touch on my sore spot, okay? Qin Feiyang was helpless. He already felt embarrassed to say these words that were hidden in his heart. Now you're asking? Aren't you embarrassing me even more? But then again, after saying these words, he felt a lot more comfortable in his heart. Buzz! At this moment, the image crystal rang. Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal and looked at Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus understood and walked to the side. When the image crystal was turned on, a shadow immediately emerged. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. Why was it Ren Xiaolan? Ren Xiaolan looked at Qin Feiyang and asked with a smile. Young Masterly, I hope I didn't disturb you. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head and asked, What's the matter? Ren Xiaolan said, The steward is looking for you. Steward? Qin Feiyang was stunned and waved his hand. Just say that I'm not free. After saying that, he was about to turn off the image crystal. But at this moment, a figure jumped to Ren Xiaolan's side and looked at Qin Feiyang aggrievedly. Brotherly, do you dislike me so much? This person was the Treasure Pavilion steward. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and said, If it's about the divine pill, let's talk face to face. Don't. I've just asked the Chief Pavilion Master. The Chief Pavilion Master said that as long as Brotherly cooperates with our Treasure Pavilion, we are willing to give you 3 clusters of 6th grade divine pill fire and a 7th grade divine pill furnace for free. The Treasure Pavilion steward hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked, Really? Absolutely. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was somewhat tempted, the supervisor quickly nodded. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered for a moment. He looked at the supervisor and said, I'm a little confused. Is there no one in the Treasure Pavilion who can refine a divine pellet with 3 dragon-shaped core energies? No. Even the best alchemist in my Treasure Pavilion can only refine divine pills with 2 dragon-shaped core chi. The Treasure Pavilion manager shook his head. In his heart, he couldn't help but grumble. If the Treasure Pavilion had such an alchemist, would we even need to look for you? What about other places? The Divine Land is so big, there must be a few who can make it, Qin Feiyang said. There is. But we can't invite these people. The manager of the Treasure Pavilion was helpless. Even your Treasure Pavilion can't move? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's not strange, right? After all, alchemists at your level basically don't lack anything. So ordinary things can't move them at all. Then there's someone like your master Yi Zhong. Even if he's tempted by a treasure, he won't refine it for us. The manager of the treasure pavilion smiled bitterly. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. However, he suddenly looked stunned and said, "What did you just say? My master Yi Zhong is also an alchemist?" The manager of the treasure pavilion was also stunned and asked in return, "You don't know?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The manager of the treasure pavilion looked at Qin Feiyang in shock and shook his head. "Brotherly, you don't even know that Yi Zhong is an alchemist. You're not qualified to be a disciple." Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. He really didn't know much about Yi Zhong. "Your master not only has a high cultivation level, but he's also recognized as the best in the divine land in alchemy. Do you know? He can refine divine pills with 4 dragon-shaped elixir auras." The manager of the treasure pavilion said. "What?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. "And he's also the only person in the divine land who has a 9th grade divine elixir fire and a 9th grade divine elixir furnace." The manager of the treasure pavilion said again. 9th grade divine elixir fire. 9th grade divine elixir furnace. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. He didn't expect the master he picked up to be so terrifying. "How is it? Is it an eye-opener?" The manager of the treasure pavilion said with a smile. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "You said that he's the only person in the divine land who has a 9th grade divine elixir fire and an elixir furnace. Does that mean that even the treasure pavilion doesn't have a 9th grade divine elixir fire and an elixir furnace?" "No. As far as I know, the best divine elixir fire and elixir furnace in the treasure pavilion are 8th grade. The manager of the treasure pavilion said. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, "What about Qin Batian? Since his ancestor could refine divine elixirs, his elixir fire and elixir furnace must be of high level." "Qin Batian?" The manager of the treasure pavilion was stunned and said, "I heard that he also has an 8th grade divine elixir fire and an elixir furnace." "Heard?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Qin Batian is the sovereign of the dragon-slaying palace. He's always been elusive. Even the treasure pavilion doesn't know much about him." The manager of the treasure pavilion shook his head. Qin Feiyang nodded and pondered for a moment. "Okay, as long as you give me an elixir fire and an elixir furnace, I agree to cooperate with you." The manager of the treasure pavilion was overjoyed and said, "Then come to the treasure pavilion now." No, I wouldn't dare to trouble you to come here in person." "Where are you now?" "I'll go find you now." "You're busy with work. Just ask Ren Xiaolan to come find me. Remember to bring an elixir fire, an elixir furnace, and the herbs you need to refine. I'll wait on the plains outside the Dragon God Mountain." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he turned off the image crystal. Fire Lotus walked to Qin Feiyang and said, "It seems that we still underestimated Yi Zhong. Yes, he has both strength and brains. Even his alchemy is so terrifying. I finally understand why our ancestor wanted him to join the dragon-slaying palace. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a person?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. Fire Lotus asked, "You're tempted too?" "Hey, he's my master." "So what? We can't let outsiders benefit." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Outsiders?" Fire Lotus was taken aback and said speechlessly, "It seems that Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang are not outsiders either." "They're definitely not outsiders, but the other 2 emperors are. So, no matter what, we can't let Yi Zhong join the dragon-slaying palace. If he's going to stay, he'll stay by our side." Qin Feiyang laughed. "You're really evil. But then again, if Yi Zhong is really willing to help you, it'll be like adding wings to a tiger. I'm afraid that not only the dragons, but even the dragon-slaying palace will be afraid of you." Fire Lotus said. "That's right. However, dreams are beautiful, reality is cruel. It's harder than ascending to heaven to get him to help us. I'm wondering why he wants to help the dragons." Qin Feiyang frowned. "Yi Qing doesn't know, and Yi Shui, definitely doesn't know either. I'm afraid only Yi Zhong himself knows the answer." After Fire Lotus finished speaking, she added, "There's also the dragon sovereign." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "Only by figuring out the answer can we deal with the right problem. It'll be difficult. After all, even Yi Qing can't find out, let alone you." Fire Lotus sighed. "Where there's a will, there's a way." Qin Feiyang smiled and controlled the black tortoise realm to fly towards the plains. A moment later, The Black Tortoise realm descended above the plains, but Ren Xiaolan hadn't arrived yet. Qin Feiyang stood in the courtyard with his head lowered, thinking about how to pry open Yi Zhong's mouth. Outside, about half an hour passed. A figure appeared. It was Ren Xiaolan. Ren Xiaolan glanced at the plains and saw that there was no one, so she waited quietly. Swish! But soon, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air. Greetings, young master. Ren Xiaolan hurriedly went up to greet him. Qin Feiyang asked, Did you bring everything? Yes. Ren Xiaolan nodded and took out a Qingquan bag, handing it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the Qingquan bag and released his spirit sense. When he saw the herbs in the Qingquan bag, the corner of his mouth twitched. The Qingquan bag was filled to the brim with herbs. Ren Xiaolan smiled and said, The steward said that although there are many herbs, there's no rush. You can refine them slowly. Qin Feiyang shook his head and took out 3 iron boxes from the Qingquan bag. Opening them immediately, 3 clusters of elixir flames appeared in front of him. After confirming, they were indeed grade 6 divine elixir flames. Qin Feiyang took out another elixir furnace from the Qingquan bag. Like the fire cloud cauldron, it was also a cauldron-shaped elixir furnace. It was scarlet red like a scorching sun, emitting a dazzling treasure light. This cauldron is called the Heaven Flames Divine Cauldron. It's one of the best elixir furnaces in the treasure pavilion. Ren Xiaolan said. All right. Wait for me here. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he entered the castle with the elixir flames, elixir furnace, and Qingquan bag. Ren Xiaolan wanted to ask if he should come back another day. After all, with so many herbs, it would definitely take a long time to refine. But before she could say anything, Qin Feiyang had already disappeared. And Qin Feiyang had a reason for asking Ren Xiaolan to deliver the herbs. Because Ren Xiaolan's cultivation hadn't reached the 9 heavens realm yet, her spirit sense couldn't capture spatial divine items. But the treasure pavilion steward was different. With his half-step eternal realm cultivation, no spatial divine item could escape his spirit sense. When the time came, if the treasure pavilion steward released his spirit sense on a whim, and found that he couldn't find the castle, he would definitely suspect that he had a heavenly domain divine stone. A heavenly domain divine stone was a treasure of heaven and earth. Once the treasure pavilion steward found out, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. In the castle, Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, Fire Lotus, come in and help me. Not long after, Fire Lotus entered the cultivation room. Looking at the Qingquan bag full of herbs, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. Next, Fire Lotus was responsible for helping to organize the herbs. Qin Feiyang focused on refining pills. In the castle, time passed day by day. About half a year later, a whole bag of herbs was finally refined. They were all life divine pills. Qin Feiyang also didn't know how many medicinal pills there were. In any case, he was exhausted, and after refining these herbs, Qin Feiyang took out the 3 6th grade pill fires and let the nether devil flame fuse with them. Boom! Without any suspense, the nether devil flame directly soared to the 7th grade divine level pill fire level. Qin Dage, why didn't you fuse them earlier? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Qin Feiyang didn't answer, just smiled faintly. Then, he took out the 7th grade divine level pill furnace Heaven Flame Divine Furnace and tried to refine a life divine pill. In the end, 4 dragon-shaped pill chi were born. See, if I had fused the 3 pill fires earlier, wouldn't the treasure pavilion have benefited? Besides, I don't want people to know that I can refine pills with 4 dragon-shaped pill chi. Qin Feiyang smiled. Fire Lotus nodded in realization and said, You can refine 4 dragon-shaped pill chi with a 7th grade divine level pill fire and pill furnace. And Yi Zhong used a 9th grade divine level pill furnace and pill fire to refine 4 dragon-shaped pill chi. Does this mean that you don't lose to him in alchemy? In the end, Fire Lotus couldn't help laughing. Keep a low profile. Qin Feiyang smiled, put all the pills into the Qingquan bag, and then left the castle with the Qingquan ring. Chapter 2556. So fast. Outside, Ren Xiaolan took the Qingquan pouch from Qin Feiyang's hands. Looking at the medicinal pills inside, She was immediately stunned. How long had it been? He had actually refined all of them. A day outside was equivalent to 100 years in the castle. Qin Feiyang had been refining pills in the castle for half a year, but only a short time had passed outside. So for Ren Xiaolan, it was unbelievable. Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed and smiled. I refined these pills before and prepared them for my own use. Since the treasure pavilion needs them, I'll give them to you first. So that's how it is. Ren Xiaolan nodded in realization. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Go back and report. Okay. Ren Xiaolan nodded, opened the altar and left. After Qin Feiyang watched Ren Xiaolan leave, he entered the castle again and prepared to cultivate. Fire Lotus asked suspiciously, You're not going back to the Dragon God Palace? Old Zhao and the others are coming back. Why should I go back now? It'll be troublesome if I have to run out again. I'll wait for them here. When they come back, we'll go back to the Dragon God Palace together. After Qin Feiyang said that, he took out the soul stone and sat cross-legged on the ground to refine it. Fire Lotus also walked out and closed the door. She stood in the castle hall and looked around at the cultivation rooms with a smile in her eyes. Fortunately, the time rules of the Black Tortoise world and the castle were the same. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough cultivation rooms for a large group of people. However, to be honest, after so many years, not only Qin Feiyang, but even she missed everyone. Soon, outside night fell. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes. With a wave of his hand, an image appeared in the void. It was the plains outside in the night. What's the situation? It's already dark. Why haven't they contacted me yet? Qin Feiyang had a trace of suspicion on his face. Lu Xingyang said that he would make arrangements when he returned. There was no need to take so long for such a small matter. Qin Dage. Fire Lotus's voice came from outside. Come in. Qin Feiyang came to his senses and said. Fire Lotus pushed the door open and entered. She looked at the night sky outside and asked suspiciously. They're not here yet? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What happened? I've already prepared accommodations for them. Why don't you ask them? Fire Lotus said. Residents. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yeah. So many people can't possibly squeeze into the castle's cultivation room, right? So I built a dozen more courtyards around the courtyard outside. Fire Lotus smiled. You're really thoughtful. Qin Feiyang smiled and took out an image crystal to send a message to Zhao Tai. However, after waiting for a long time, Zhao Tailai did not respond. Qin Feiyang frowned and sent a message to Tang Hai. But in the end, there was still no response. Fire Lotus was also a little dazed. Qin Feiyang then sent a message to the Mermaid Princess, Qin Rushuang, Dan Wangkai, Willow Tree, Yu Huang, Blood Kirin and the other beasts. But none of them responded to him. This made Qin Feiyang's brows furrow even tighter. Fire Lotus asked, Qin Dage, did something happen? I don't think so. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Everyone followed the ancestor. What accident could there be? Maybe they were delayed by something. Wait a little longer. Outside. Another day passed. And in the castle, 100 years had passed. However, no one sent a message. Qin Feiyang finally couldn't sit still anymore. He got up and walked out of the cultivation room. Standing in the castle hall, he said, Jiang Dafei, come out for a moment. Soon, Jiang Dafei ran out of a cultivation room and asked, Young master, what's the matter? Qin Feiyang said, Send a message to the Divine General. I have something to ask him. Okay. Jiang Dafei looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and took out the image crystal. At this time, Fire Lotus also walked in from outside. Buzz. A moment later, the Divine General's shadow appeared. Greetings, young master. The Divine General bowed. Qin Feiyang said, Help me ask. Before Qin Feiyang could finish, the Divine General smiled and said, Young master, do you want to know about the Mermaid Princess and the others? How do you know? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. I was going to contact you and report this to you. Emperor Qin just sent me a message saying that the Mermaid Princess and the others won't look for you for the time being. The Divine General smiled. Why? Qin Feiyang frowned. They are now at a critical juncture of their seclusion, so it's not good to disturb them. The Divine General said, I see. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a faint smile. I thought something happened. How is that possible? Where else is safer than staying with the two sovereigns? The divine general was speechless. Okay then. Tell them for me that I'll wait for them on the plains outside the Dragon God Mountain. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. The divine general nodded. When Jiang Dafei turned off the image crystal, the divine general's face suddenly darkened, and he activated the image crystal again. Buzz! Soon, Qin Baishan's shadow appeared. Emperor Qin. The divine general bowed respectfully. What's wrong? Qin Batian looked at him suspiciously. The divine general said in a low voice. Qin Feiyang sent this subordinate a message earlier, asking about the mermaid princess and the others. What did you say? Qin Batian was shocked and asked hurriedly. This subordinate told him that everyone is in seclusion, and he believed me. However, he's still waiting outside the Dragon God Mountain. The divine general said. Qin Batian could not help but frown. My lord, we can only delay for a while. We have to think of a way quickly. You know Qin Feiyang's temper. If he knows about this, I'm afraid he won't let it go. The divine general said. I know. Try to delay it. I'll think of a way as soon as possible. Qin Batian nodded. Okay. My lord Qin, what do you think Supreme Cloud and the others are thinking? Don't they know Qin Feiyang's temperament? He's amenable to persuasion but not coercion. This will only anger him. The divine general frowned. Actually, they really don't know Feiyang. With Lu Xingyang and I around, there's no need to worry about the mermaid princess and the others' safety. I'm just worried that this matter will affect the future of the dragon-slaying palace. Qin Batian sighed. The divine general was also worried when he heard this. Let's leave it at that for now. I hope that Feiyang will enter the Nether King's hell. At least it will give me enough time to resolve this matter. Qin Batian shook his head, and the projection quickly dissipated. Sigh. The divine general put away the image crystal and sighed. He really did not expect that these two sovereigns had their eyes on the mermaid princess and the others for a long time. Inside the ancient castle, out of trust for Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang, Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus did not suspect anything. Jiang Dafei also went into seclusion in the cultivation room again. Qin Feiyang said a few words to Fire Lotus, then returned to the cultivation room and focused on cultivation. To break through to the Great Divinity stage, one needed to refine 40 billion soul stones. After breaking through to the Great Divinity stage, Qin Feiyang's refining speed increased again. He had calculated carefully. Currently, he could refine about 2,050 soul stones a day. According to the time outside, Qin Feiyang would need to cultivate in seclusion for more than 53,000 years. However, if one day in the ancient castle was 100 years, he would only need about 530 days. 530 days was less than a year and a half. Therefore, he had enough time to break through to the Great Divinity stage before the Nether King's hell opened. When he entered the Nether King's hell, he would spend some time to break through to the consummate divinity stage. Then he would be able to take the Yin-Yang Chaos Pill. Now that he could refine the Yin-Yang Chaos Pill with 4 dragon-shaped core energies, his chances of breaking through 2 minor realms had greatly increased. If he was lucky, he would be able to break through to the half-step 9th Heavens realm from the perfect divinity stage. As long as he reached the half-step 9th Heavens realm, he would be able to protect himself with the various autark divine arts he possessed, even if he couldn't use any heaven-defying divine artifacts or divine arts. Of course, if his luck was as bad as last time, and he only broke through 1 minor realm after taking the Yin-Yang Chaos Pill, he could only blame himself for his bad luck. Time passed quietly just like that. Suddenly one day, Yi Zhong appeared on the first island. Grandpa, Yi Shui, walked out of the cave and hugged Yi Zhong's arm. She giggled. Grandpa, how have I been recently? Barely. Yi Zhong nodded. Yi Shui paused, then said unhappily, I've been cultivating all day, and you call that barely? Yi Zhong said calmly, You want Grandpa to praise you but Grandpa won't. Humph. Yi Shui pouted and snorted unhappily. Where's Li Buer? That kid is too disrespectful. I came here personally, so he should at least come out. Li Zhong lowered his head and looked at Qin Feiyang's cave and raised his eyebrows. He's not in the cave. Yi Shuai shook her head. Not in. Yi Zhong was stunned. Yes. I don't know where he went, but I saw him sneaking away with frenzy a while ago. Yi Shuai said. Sneaking? Yi Zhong frowned. They must be up to something. Yi Shuai looked at Yi Zhong suspiciously. Grandpa, what are you doing here? The Nether King's hell is about to open, so I'm here to see if you're honest. You're not bad. But Li Buer, no. Shuai, when he comes back, you must keep an eye on him for me, in case he sneaks to the Nether King's hell. Yi Zhong reminded. Yi Shuai was stunned and smiled. Grandpa, it seems that you're still quite concerned about him. Concerned about him? You're thinking too much. I just don't want him to embarrass me in the Nether King's hell. More importantly, he doesn't know his place at all. He likes to mess around all day long. Yi Zhong snorted coldly. Yes. You're right. Anyway, I know that you have a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Yi Shuai smiled. Yi Zhong smiled awkwardly and said, All right then, continue to be conscientious. Don't be led astray by Li Buer. Can you stop saying that? I'm not a child. Yi Shuai complained unhappily. In my eyes, you'll always be a child. Yi Zhong rubbed Yi Shuai's head with a loving expression. Hee. Yi Shuai smiled and lowered her head, her face full of bliss. Chapter 2557. One day, Qin Feiyang's cultivation finally broke through and stepped into the great success stage, one step closer to the Nine Heavens realm. But he didn't come out of seclusion. He looked for fire lotus and brought all kinds of medicinal herbs to refine pills, especially spirit sea pill, divine power pill, divine soul pill, heavenly dust divine pill, divine life pill, and so on. Spirit sea pill, repair chi si. Divine power pill, restore divine power. Divine soul pill, restore divine soul. Divine life pill, heal injuries. Heavenly dust divine pill, increase cultivation. In the Nether King's hell, these pills were definitely needed the most. Qin Feiyang had refined a lot of them in case of emergencies. For example, he had refined more than 100,000 divine life pills, all of which had 4 dragon-shaped pill chi. Phew! After refining the pills, Qin Feiyang walked out of the castle, looked at the medicinal field outside, and let out a long breath. Alchemy was truly an exhausting task. Right now, he especially missed Dan Wangkai. If Dan Wangkai was by his side, he wouldn't need to refine pills himself. But after all these years, how much had Dan Wangkai's mental strength grown? And what level of pills could he refine? Strange. Why haven't they come to find me yet? Qin Feiyang gradually frowned. What were these guys doing? Qin Dage. At this time, Fire Lotus walked over from afar with a faint smile on her face. Where did you come from? Qin Feiyang looked up and asked with a smile. Divine Treasury. Fire Lotus laughed. Divine Treasury. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, Why don't we change the time of the Divine Treasury's opening and open it once every 1,000 years, so that you don't have to run around and cause trouble? What's so troublesome about that? Fire Lotus shook her head and said, Qin Dage, I've been thinking about a problem during this time. What problem? Qin Feiyang looked at her suspiciously. In the Nether King's hell, the moment you use a heaven-defying divine weapon, you will be killed by the power of the natural order. Although that ancient castle is sealed, it's still a heaven-defying divine artifact. If you enter the castle and the castle is exposed, will you be killed by the power of laws? Fire Lotus frowned. This, Qin Feiyang lowered his head. He had never thought about this question before. Fire Lotus asked, Why don't you consult Yi Zhong again? Yi Zhong is against me entering the Infernal King's hell. If I ask him now, he will definitely suspect that I have other thoughts. Do you think he will still tell me? Qin Feiyang felt helpless. Then let Yi Cheng send him a message. Yi Cheng is his younger brother. He can't possibly hide it from him. Fire Lotus said. Yeah. Qin Feiyang patted his head, turned around and entered the castle hall. He shouted, Yi Cheng, come out. Boom. Very soon, the stone door of a cultivation room opened. Yi Cheng walked out in large strides. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. Hearing this, Yi Cheng nodded in realization and took out an image crystal. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus retreated to the side. Buzz! Not long later, the shadow of a white-haired old man appeared. It was Yi Zhong, big brother. Yi Ching smiled. Yi Zhong looked at the wall behind Yi Cheng and asked suspiciously, "Where are you?" Yi Ching said, "I'm cultivating in seclusion outside." Yi Zhong was slightly taken aback and asked in puzzlement, "If you're in closed-door cultivation, then go into closed-door cultivation. Why did you run outside?" "I'm afraid of being disturbed." Yi Ching smiled. "You're the Deputy Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. Who dares to disturb your cultivation?" Yi Zhong shook his head speechlessly and asked, "Why did you send me a message?" Yi Ching said, "I want to inquire about the situation in the Infernal King's Hell." "Why are you asking about the Infernal King's Hell? Do you want to go in too?" Yi Zhong frowned. "How would I dare to go in? I'm just a little curious." Yi Ching was helpless. "Really? Don't tell me Li Buer sent you to inquire about it," Yi Zhong said. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. He really couldn't hide anything from this old man. "Li Buer?" Yi Ching pretended to be stunned and asked suspiciously, "Is he going to the Infernal King's Hell too?" "He definitely wants to, but I won't allow him to go because no one knows better than me how dangerous the Infernal King's Hell is. With his cultivation level, he'll definitely die if he goes in," Yi Zhong said. Yi Ching smiled and said, "It seems that you're quite concerned about him." "Sigh. After all, he saved the old master's life. And he's my disciple. Of course I have to fulfill my duty as a master." Yi Zhong shook his head and said, "Tell me, what do you want to know?" "I heard that Qin Feiyang seems to have a spatial divine item?" Yi Ching asked. "Yes. His spatial divine item is an ancient castle, and it's a heaven-defying divine weapon." Yi Zhong nodded. "If he enters the Infernal King's Hell and meets you and hides in the castle, won't you be at your wits' end?" Yi Ching was surprised. "If he hides in the castle outside, I won't be able to do anything. But if he dares to enter the Infernal King's Hell, he'll be digging his own grave." Yi Zhong sneered. Yi Ching was stunned and asked curiously, "Brother, what do you mean?" "There's something you don't know. In the Infernal King's Hell, even a spatial divine item can't be activated, let alone a heaven-defying divine weapon like the castle." Yi Zhong said, "What? A spatial divine item can't be activated?" Yi Ching was shocked. Qin Feiyang and Huolian couldn't help but be moved. "That's right. A spatial divine item can't be used in the Infernal King's Hell. In other words, the people outside can't enter, and the people inside can't come out. This includes his independent small world," Yi Zhong said. "There's actually such a thing." Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Yi Ching was also shocked. He looked at Yi Zhong and said, "I didn't expect the Infernal King's Hell to be so terrifying." "Of course it's terrifying. Otherwise, why would it be called the Infernal King's Hell? This is a hellish existence," Yi Zhong said. Yi Ching asked suspiciously, "Then why didn't you announce this news to the public?" "Of course, it's to deal with Qin Feiyang." Yi Zhong smiled. "Deal with him?" Yi Ching was stunned. "That's right. Think about it. If he enters the Infernal King's Hell unprepared, and suddenly realizes that he can't enter the spatial divine item, what will he do? He will definitely panic. Once a person panics, they will reveal many flaws. The most important thing is, without knowing, he will definitely put a lot of important things in the castle for the time being. For example, pills, soul stones, divine crystals, etc. And in the Infernal King's Hell, these things are crucial. It can even be said that without these things, it will be difficult for him to survive in the Infernal King's Hell. When he enters and realizes that he can't take these things out of the castle, won't he be desperate?" Yi Zhong smiled. "I see." Yi Ching suddenly understood and smiled. "Big brother, forgive me for being blunt, but this seems a little despicable. There's no other way. If you want to deal with this kid, you have to be a little despicable." Yi Zhong shook his head, his face full of helplessness. If there was a way, he wouldn't choose to use such a dirty trick. "All right then. I wish you success in your mission. I'll continue to cultivate." Yi Ching smiled. "Okay." Yi Zhong nodded. Yi Ching turned off the image crystal and looked helplessly at Qin Feiyang, saying, It seems that Big Brother is determined to get rid of you this time. Then let's see if his virtue is 1 foot higher, or if my devil is 10 feet higher. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yi Qing sighed. No matter what, I still hope that you can show mercy. I know. Qin Feiyang nodded. To be honest, he really couldn't bear to kill Yi Zhong. Because this old man, no matter what, was amazing. Take this time for example. If Fire Lotus hadn't thought of this, he would have really entered the Infernal King's hell without any preparation. And as Yi Zhong said, he would also put those pills that he prepared in advance in the castle. Then when he entered the Infernal King's hell, he would really be in a helpless situation. Fortunately, he had checked this point in advance. This allowed him to be sufficiently prepared. Qin Dage, not being able to enter the castle and the Black Tortoise world is not a small matter. You have to make arrangements in advance. Fire Lotus asked. There's nothing to arrange. You all cultivate well in the castle and the Black Tortoise world. I will go to the Infernal King's hell alone. Qin Feiyang said. What? You're going alone? Fire Lotus was shocked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. I don't agree. Fire Lotus shook her head. I don't agree either. Yi Qing also spoke. If he went to the Infernal King's hell alone, then Qin Feiyang would have to face the dragons alone. Wasn't this courting death? Qin Feiyang looked at the attitude of the two and smiled. This matter is not urgent. Wait until the Infernal King's hell opens. This was just a delaying tactic to appease the two. At that time, when the Infernal King's hell opened, and he went in alone, Fire Lotus and the others would be helpless. Because without his permission, no one would be able to leave the Black Tortoise world and the castle. Actually, there was a reason for his decision. Although everyone followed him and could take care of each other, because of the power of the rules of the Infernal King's hell, Fire Lotus, Feng Daji, Hua Yi, and the 5-clawed golden dragon all had to suppress their cultivation to the 9-heaven realm. To be honest, if Fire Lotus and the others suppressed their cultivation to the 9-heaven realm, they wouldn't be able to help at all. Not to mention people like Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan. So since everyone was in danger, he might as well go in alone without any worries and fight with the dragons. However, Fire Lotus and Yi Qing weren't stupid either. They didn't believe Qin Feiyang's nonsense at all. When Qin Feiyang returned to the cultivation room, the two of them gathered everyone. There was Frenzy, Wang Daoyuan, Li Changhe, Feng Daji, Jiang Dafei, Lei Bing and Wang Qi. There was also the White-Eyed Wolf, the Big Black Wolf, and the Black Panther brothers. What's wrong? Frenzy looked at Fire Lotus and Yi Qing in confusion. Sigh. Fire Lotus sighed and explained the situation in detail. After hearing it, except for Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf, everyone was unanimously against it. Going to the Infernal King's hell alone? What a joke. Brother Wolf, you have the best relationship with Qin Dage. Why don't you talk to him? Fire Lotus turned to look at the silent White-Eyed Wolf and said, Don't you know little Qin Zi's stubborn temper? Once he makes a decision, even 10 cows can't pull him back. White-Eyed Wolf pinched his nose and said indifferently. Big Black Wolf frowned and said, Boss Wolf, why don't you look worried at all? Worried about what? He's not a child. Don't worry about it. Don't disturb my cultivation. That's it. White-Eyed Wolf waved his paws and returned to the cultivation room. I thought it was something big, but it turned out to be this trivial matter. What a waste of time. Frenzy said indifferently and returned to the cultivation room without looking back. What do these two guys mean? Everyone couldn't help but frown. Looking at the indifferent attitude of Frenzy and White-Eyed Wolf, they couldn't help but feel angry. Only Fire Lotus looked at the backs of Frenzy and White-Eyed Wolf thoughtfully. Chapter 2558. In the blink of an eye. There were only 2 days left before the opening of the Nether King's Hell. Ever since returning to the cultivation room, Qin Feiyang had been cultivating. Although there was still a long way to go before he could break through to the perfected Paragon God realm, he could improve as much as he could. Everyone came to find him more than once. But every time, Qin Feiyang would send them away with "We'll talk about it later." At this moment, although there were still 2 days before the opening of the Nether King's Hell, there was already a sea of people outside the plane. Everyone was looking forward to it. These people's cultivation bases were not low, at least above the Paragon God realm. Only a few people were divine lords. As for war gods, none of them were seen, because in a place like the Nether King's Hell, not to mention war gods and divine lords, even Paragon gods would find it difficult to protect themselves. Although treasures were important, their lives were more important. Therefore, although many people were eager to enter the Nether King's Hell, they knew their limits and were unwilling to take the risk. Dong. This morning, there was a knock on the door. Persuading me again? Qin Feiyong opened his eyes, full of helplessness. He looked at the stone door and said, "Come in." The stone door opened. A man and a wolf swaggered into the cultivation room. It was the white-eyed wolf and the madman. The white-eyed wolf's cultivation had already broken through to the perfected Paragon God realm, because it had been in seclusion all this time. The madman's aura was also close to the perfected Paragon God realm. Rare guests. Qin Feiyong stood up and looked at them. During this time, only the madman and the white-eyed wolf hadn't come to persuade him. The madman closed the stone door and said, "Don't misunderstand, we're not here to persuade you." "Then why are you here?" Qin Feiyong looked at them suspiciously. "Hey!" The white-eyed wolf chuckled. The madman also smiled but didn't say anything. Looking at the expressions of the man and the wolf, Qin Feiyong seemed to understand what they meant. He shook his head and said, "No." The white-eyed wolf said, "We're not here to discuss it with you." "That's right. We're here to officially inform you." Madman nodded. Qin Feiyong could not help feeling a headache as he said, "What the hell are you guys thinking? Isn't it good to stay here and cultivate quietly?" "Of course it's good to stay here and cultivate. 100 years in a day. When you come out of hell, we might have already stepped into the imperishable realm." The white-eyed wolf said. Qin Feiyong frowned. "Then why did you go to hell?" "I'm here to join in the fun," the white-eyed wolf said. Qin Feiyong's mouth twitched. Cough cough. "Let's be serious. I have to go to the hell of the underworld king," Madman said. "Why?" Qin Feiyong was suspicious. Madman said, "Actually, I have heard of the underworld king's hell before." "How did you hear about it?" Qin Feiyong was bewildered. One had to know. This hell of the underworld kings, hell was the secret of the dragons. An old man who once taught me the heaven-defying technique told me. He also said that if there is a chance, I must go in, saying that there is some great opportunity. Madman said, "It can't be. Don't lie to me." Qin Feiyong frowned. "Why would I lie to you?" That old man said that the heaven-defying technique that he taught me was obtained from the hell of the underworld king. Madman said unhappily, "What old man?" Qin Feiyong was suspicious. "Secret." Madman smiled mysteriously. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes, then looked at the white-eyed wolf and frowned. "Then what's your reason?" "Didn't I just say that I want to join in the fun?" The white-eyed wolf chuckled. "Get lost." Qin Feiyong immediately glared at him. Why would he join in the fun in such a place? The white-eyed wolf said proudly, "If you don't let me go, I won't let you go either." "Are you threatening me?" Qin Feiyong was slightly stunned and joked. "I'm really curious. What are you going to use to stop me?" The white-eyed wolf grinned. Qin Feiyong immediately had an ominous premonition. "Don't be nervous. I won't do anything to you. At most, I'll just let Fire Lotus keep an eye on you." The white-eyed wolf smiled sinisterly. "Can you be more shameless?" Qin Feiyong's face darkened as he said angrily, "Don't use shameless to describe me. I've already turned over a new leaf. Now, I'm as innocent as a newborn baby." The white-eyed wolf said, "Where's your shame?" Qin Feiyong sneered. Madman also looked at the white-eyed wolf with disdain. "I'm not joking with you." The white-eyed wolf waved his paws and said, "In fact, I entered the hell for a reason." Qin Feiyong said, "Don't tell me you already know about the hell." "You don't say I really know," the white-eyed wolf said. "Do I look like a fool to you?" Qin Feiyong said angrily. Who knew the white-eyed wolf's background better than him? How dare he say that he knew about the hell? Was he kidding him? The white-eyed wolf chuckled and said, "Little Qinzi, think about it carefully. Do you really know me?" "Nonsense." Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. They had been together since childhood. How could he not know him? The white-eyed wolf said with a smile, "Brother, do you really know me now?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Before becoming a god, I did know you well, but what about after becoming a god? The white-eyed wolf teased. After becoming a god? Qin Feiyang frowned. Thinking about it carefully, this wolf cub seemed to be hiding a lot of secrets after becoming a god. Just like the white-eyed wolf's current appearance. It had golden fur all over its body. His eyeballs seemed to be cast in gold foil. And on his back, there were two small golden wings. What puzzled him the most was the pattern between the white-eyed wolf's eyebrows. The pattern was blood-red in color, resembling the wings of a fiery phoenix. It gave off a mysterious feeling. Qin Feiyang had asked about these changes before, but the white-eyed wolf had always been mysterious. In short, I'm like a madman. I have to go to the hell, the white-eyed wolf said. Okay, you are all my masters. You can do whatever you want. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. Then let's discuss. What should we prepare? The white-eyed wolf chuckled. I've already prepared the pills. Even if the two of you go together, it's enough. Now we only lack the soul stones and divine crystals. But the fire lotus is guarding the medicine field every day. These soul stones and divine crystals are really not easy to deal with. Qin Feiyang rubbed his head. The white-eyed wolf said, Isn't that simple? Brother and madman will send her away. Bang! But at this moment, the stone door was kicked open. The two men and one wolf hurriedly looked over and saw Fire Lotus walking in angrily, saying angrily, You guys are really something, joining hands to scheme against me. The two men and one wolf were a little embarrassed. Enough. I know your temper. It's useless even if I keep an eye on you. I'll go prepare the soul stones and divine crystals for you later. But you have to promise that you must survive. Fire Lotus said helplessly. Of course. Qin Feiyang laughed. Fire Lotus rolled her eyes and asked, Then what about Jiang Dafei Lei Bing and Wang Qi? They are all city lords now, so they can't stay in the Black Tortoise realm forever. Qin Feiyang was startled and said, Then have their cultivations broken through? Jiang Dafei has already broken through a long time ago. As for Lei Bing and Wang Qi, they are still a little short. It should only be a few decades. Fire Lotus said, A few decades doesn't matter. Anyway, there are still 2 days. 2 days outside is 200 years in the ancient castle. It's enough for them to break through. When they break through, remember to help them open the door to their potential. Qin Feiyang said. I know. Fire Lotus nodded and said, There's also Hui and the 5-clawed golden dragon. Call them back as well. I'll send a message to them later. Qin Feiyang smiled. All right then. Fire Lotus looked helplessly at the two men and the wolf, then turned and walked out. Qin Feiyang looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf, and said with a smile, Fortunately, this girl is easy to talk to, otherwise I really don't know how to persuade her. After saying that, he took out the image crystal. Wang. Not long later, Hui's shadow appeared. Qin Feiyang asked, Where? In the south with Xiaojin. Hui said. What are you doing in the south? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. You don't know. The identity of the young lord in the south is too mysterious. We still haven't investigated his identity. Hui said. It can't be. Qin Feiyang was stunned. I'm not joking with you. Even now I haven't seen him. It's as if this person doesn't exist at all. Hui said. So mysterious? Qin Feiyang frowned. However, we have investigated Du Yuntian and Wu Baichuan very clearly. This time, they will also use the identity of a disciple of the Dragon God Palace to enter the Underworld King's Hell. Hui said. They are also disciples of the Dragon God Palace? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. The two of them have already entered the Dragon God Palace in the east and west. Hui nodded. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said, Then you guys come back first and meet at Black Tortoise Mountain. Okay. Hui responded and turned off the image crystal. Even Hui and the 5-clawed golden dragon can't find out the identity of this person? Why do I feel that he is even more mysterious than us? The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman in disbelief. This person is the representative of the old ancestor. You don't have to worry too much about him. As for Du Yuntian and Wu Baichuan, I was worried that I wouldn't have a chance to deal with them. I didn't expect that they would take the initiative to come to me. Qin Feiyang sneered. Haha. At that time, you don't even need to do anything. This brother will help you deal with them. The white-eyed wolf laughed wildly. You? Qin Feiyang shook his head. What? Looking down on this brother? Let me tell you, little Qin Zi. If I don't open the slaughter domain, you may not be my opponent. The white-eyed wolf said proudly. Really? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Nonsense. When has this brother ever lied to you? The white-eyed wolf glared at him. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf with a face full of surprise. With such confidence, it seemed that when this fellow became a god, he might have really obtained some kind of great fortune. The white-eyed wolf urged. Hurry up, refine a yin and yang chaos pill. This brother wants to break through to the half-step ninth heaven realm. Break through to the half-step ninth heaven realm? Qin Feiyang was stunned. But then he thought of the white-eyed wolf's current cultivation and understood. This fellow had already broken through to the perfection stage, and could indeed break through to the half-step ninth heaven realm. However, whether or not he could successfully break through to the half-step ninth heaven realm would depend on his luck. Don't worry, brother's luck is definitely not a problem. The white-eyed wolf clamored. Arrogant. If you don't succeed later, I'll see how you cry. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly, then left the castle and entered the medicinal field. Chapter 2559. After finding a set of herbs for the yin-yang chaos pill, Qin Feiyang prepared to return to the castle. But he suddenly stopped. After entering the Nether King's Hell, he could no longer enter the castle and the Black Tortoise world. Then he and Frenzied would have to prepare the yin-yang chaos pill and Supreme Nirvana pill in advance. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang entered the medicinal field again and found a dozen sets of herbs before returning to the castle. He and Frenzied naturally didn't need so much, but it was better to be prepared. Whoosh! A moment later, a yin-yang chaos pill was produced. The white-eyed wolf anxiously ran up, grabbed the pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Qin Feiyang retreated to the side and glanced at Frenzied. Do you think it will be as lucky as last time? Last time? Frenzied was taken aback and rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang. I wasn't there last time, okay? But I heard Big Black Wolf and the others talk about that matter. Maybe the white-eyed wolf's character is really better than yours. Not necessarily, Qin Feiyang said. Besides, there are 4 dragon-shaped Korchi now. With a 40% success rate, as long as it isn't too unlucky, it shouldn't be a problem, Frenzied said. Boom! While they were talking, the white-eyed wolf's aura soared. In less than 10 breaths, it forcefully broke through to the perfection paragon. But it didn't stop. Its aura was still soaring. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled sound exploded in the white-eyed wolf's body. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. This guy was really lucky, successfully breaking through 2 small realms again. Sometimes you really have to believe in a person's character. The white-eyed wolf withdrew his aura. He looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed complacently. Then, he rushed out of the cultivation room like a wisp of smoke and shouted, Huo Lian, quickly come and help this brother open the door of potential. Not bad. Before entering the Nether King's Hell, break through to the half-step ninth heaven realm. In the future, we have to curry favor with it, lest it abandons us in the Nether King's Hell. Frenzied said. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. Indeed, if the Nether King's Hell couldn't activate the heaven-defying divine arts, then the heaven-defying divine arts he and the mad scientist had were useless. Even a half-step 9 heavens realm cultivator was enough to take their lives. Therefore, the fact that the white-eyed wolf had broken through to the half-step 9th heavens realm was a timely help to them. However, with the white-eyed wolf's shameless personality, he would definitely torment them on purpose once they entered Hades' hell. While there's still time, I'll go into seclusion and cultivate for a while. Remember to call me when the time comes, Madman said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. After the madman left, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and an image appeared in the air. The screen showed the scene of the plains outside. Looking at the endless sea of people, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but shake his head. So many people rushed in one after another. But in the end, How many people would be able to come out alive? After dispelling the image, Qin Feiyang drove the ancient castle away from the plains and appeared in a secluded place. He then activated the altar and rushed towards Black Tortoise Mountain. Black Tortoise Mountain. It was incomparably quiet. When Qin Feiyang rushed over, Huai and the five-clawed golden dragon were already waiting. Huai asked, "Are you really going to Hades' hell?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and laughed. "You guys don't have to join in the fun. I hope that when I come out of Hades' hell, you guys will have already broken through to the small success stage of the immortal realm." "What do you mean?" Huai was suspicious. "To tell you the truth, after entering Hades' hell, I won't be able to enter the ancient castle and Black Tortoise world. And you guys won't be able to come out of the ancient castle and Black Tortoise world." Qin Feiyang said. "So it's like that?" Huai nodded in realization, and then hurriedly said, "Wait, then aren't you alone?" Qin Feiyang laughed. "I'm not alone, there's still the madman and the white-eyed wolf." "Madman?" Huai muttered and sent a sound transmission. "Madman can indeed make a trip to Hades' hell. This child's talent is extraordinary. If he is tempered, he will definitely become a great person." Qin Feiyang nodded. When the five-clawed golden dragon heard this, he gave Huai a look and said, "Then let's not go to Black Tortoise World and the ancient castle." Huai was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood and nodded with a smile. Yes, it's boring to cultivate all day that. Qin Feiyang, lend us your space-time gate." "What for?" Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them suspiciously. "Don't worry about it," Huai said. "Are you sure you don't want to go to Black Tortoise World and the ancient castle? You have to know that Feng Daji and Fire Lotus will be staying there. When they come out of Hades' hell, their cultivation will definitely surpass yours." Qin Feiyang said. When the two of them heard this, they began to hesitate. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them and asked tentatively, "Do you want to go to Eastern Tomb's Heaven Immortal Tower?" Cough, cough. The two of them immediately coughed, and their expressions were a little awkward. "You guys." Qin Feiyang shook his head speechlessly, took out the space-time gate and said, "Take it, but you have to come back after midnight. I don't object to drinking, but you can't neglect your cultivation." "All right." The five-clawed golden dragon nodded repeatedly. Huai also chuckled, grabbed the space-time gate, and quickly opened it, then ran in with the five-clawed golden dragon. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. These two fellows were really a match made in heaven. Then, Qin Feiyang also entered the ancient castle and continued to cultivate. But suddenly, he frowned. What was going on with Zhao Tailai and the others? Why hadn't they come looking for him yet? He took out the image crystal again and sent a message to everyone. But just like last time, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Qin Feiyang was not in the mood to cultivate for a moment. Sitting in front of the desk, he couldn't help but feel upset. "Qin Dage, these are the soul stones and divine crystals I prepared for you. There are tens of trillions of soul stones. As for divine crystals, I have also prepared trillions. It should be enough for you." After a while, Fire Lotus came in with dozens of interspatial rings. Qin Feiyang nodded. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was absent-minded, Fire Lotus put the interspatial rings on the table and asked suspiciously, "What's the matter? What do you think is going on with old Zhao and the others? Even if they are in closed-door cultivation, it shouldn't take so long, right? Let's talk about it later. With so many people, it's impossible that they are all at the critical moment of closed-door cultivation." Qin Feiyang frowned. Fire Lotus was stunned and nodded. "After hearing what you said, it's a little strange. It's too much of a coincidence that they are all at the critical moment of closed-door cultivation. Fire Lotus, do you think this divine general is hiding something from me?" Qin Feiyang looked up at Fire Lotus and asked. "I don't know." Fire Lotus shook her head and said, "Do you want me to call Jiang Dafei and ask him again?" "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. Fire Lotus turned and walked out. After a while, she came back with Jiang Dafei. "Did you break through?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. "Yes." Jiang Dafei nodded and said with a smile. "It's all thanks to this time formation. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would take for me to break through." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Send another message to the Divine General. I want to ask him something. Okay. Jiang Dafei took out an image crystal. Buzz. The Divine General's image soon appeared and said with a smile. Young Lord, what can I do for you? Don't play dumb with me. Mermaid Princess and the others are still in closed-door cultivation. Qin Feiyang asked. Why are you in such a hurry? They will come to you when they are out. The Divine General said. Qin Feiyang stared at the Divine General and asked. Are you sure you have nothing to hide from me? The Divine General panicked, but he immediately calmed down and said with a wry smile. If it were someone else, I might have the guts, but I don't dare to do that to you, young lord. You better not. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Help me hurry them up. The Hell of the Underworld King is about to open. They have to come here before the Hell of the Underworld King opens. Qin Feiyang said. The Divine General's expression stiffened and he said with a smile. Young lord, forgive me for being blunt. If you are determined to go to the Nether King's Hell, I personally think that the Mermaid Princess and the others should stay in the Dragon Slayer Palace for the time being. Why? Qin Feiyang frowned. Because it's safe. If you go to the Nether King's Hell, what if something happens to you? Won't they be implicated? The Divine General said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at Fire Lotus and said, That makes sense. Fire Lotus nodded. Don't worry. They will stay in the Dragon Slayer Palace with the protection of 2 sovereigns. It's safer than anywhere else. The Divine General smiled. All right then. Qin Feiyang nodded. The Divine General said, I still have something to do. That's all for now. Okay. Qin Feiyang said. After the Divine General turned off the image crystal, he couldn't help but heave a long sigh of relief. He had finally fooled them. However, this wasn't a long-term solution, because paper couldn't be kept secret. Sooner or later, Qin Feiyang would find out. In the ancient castle. Ancestor definitely wouldn't lie to me. Jiang Dafei continued to cultivate. When the Nether King's Hell opens, you Lei Bing and Wang Qi will return to your posts. During my absence, you must control the situation in the north. Qin Feiyang instructed. Understood. Jiang Dafei replied respectfully. All right. There's one more thing. Du Yintian and Wu Baichuan will also enter the Nether King's Hell. At that time, you should secretly contact the people from the east and west regions. I want all of these people to be my subordinates. Qin Feiyang said. What? Jiang Dafei was shocked and hurriedly said. Young master, you're crossing the line. The first ones to cross the line are Du Yintian and Wu Baichuan. As for the list of people from the east and west regions, you should go to the Divine General. Qin Feiyang said. Jiang Dafei couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that what Du Yintian and Wu Baichuan had done had angered the young master. Okay. We'll definitely complete the task. Jiang Dafei replied respectfully. Complete the task and I'll reward you handsomely. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Thank you, young master. Jiang Dafei wasn't afraid of other things. He was only afraid that this would anger the sovereigns behind Du Yintian and Wu Baichuan. The anger of 2 sovereigns was no joke. However, the young master didn't seem to care. Go! Qin Feiyang waved his hand. This subordinate will take his leave. Jiang Dafei bowed respectfully and turned to leave. Qin Feiyang also stood up and looked at Fire Lotus with a smile. Girl, I'll have to trouble you with the Black Tortoise world in the future. You can go and explore in peace. You don't have to worry about the Black Tortoise world. Fire Lotus said. It's good to have you. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Fire Lotus's cheeks reddened. Buzz! At this time, Qin Feiyang's image crystal rang. Qin Feiyang was stunned, and then took out the image crystal. Immediately, 4 familiar silhouettes appeared. Qin Feiyang looked at the 4 people in shock. Surprised. We actually took the initiative to send you a message. One of them laughed. It's quite surprising. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked, How's it going? Are you doing well in the Dragon Slayer Palace? These 4 people were the demon ancestor, Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing and Dong Junyang. Chapter 2560. Of course it's not bad. You don't have to care about anything. Just focus on cultivation and endless resources. Are you envious of us? As a descendant of Qin Batian, you still have to fight for yourself? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang proudly. I'm sorry. I'm a person who doesn't like to reap without sowing. You can only have a clear conscience if you work hard to get it. If you sent me a message to show off to me, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Haha. Mu Tianyang laughed and said, after so many years you're still so arrogant. After so many years aren't you still the same? Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. Do you have to be stubborn to the end? Mu Tianyang's face darkened. Am I? Qin Feiyang was a little innocent and said with a smile. I'm just telling the truth. Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes. The demon ancestor looked at the two of them and said helplessly. After so many years, can't you two talk calmly? Is there any meaning in this? Not interested. Qin Feiyang shook his head. I'm not interested either. Mu Tianyang pursed his lips and said with a teasing smile. But there's something you'll definitely be interested in. Is that so? Qin Feiyang didn't think much of it. The demon ancestor said. On this matter, Mu Tianyang really didn't lie to you. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a frown. Don't tell me you guys want to go to hell too? No. We're not interested in hell. Dong Jungyang waved his hand. Then what is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. It's about the mermaid princess and the other's current situation. The demon ancestor said. Qin Feiyang was bewildered. Qin Batian and Lu Jungyang told us not to tell you about this matter. But we thought about it and felt that it was unfair to you. So we decided to send you a message. Said the fiend ancestor. What's going on? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He didn't expect that the ancestors and old ancestor were really hiding something from him. The last time Lu Jungyang came to see you, didn't you agree to let the mermaid princess and the others return to your side? Ancestor Fiend asked. That's right. I believe that all of you should already know that the Black Tortoise world and the ancient castle's current time rules. Staying in the dragon-slaying palace will only delay their future. Qin Feiyang said. 100 years in a day. We really want to go too. How about it? Can you give us a chance? Mu Tianyang smiled. Qin Feiyang coldly looked at him. He continued to look at Demon Alpha. This matter started from the time when it happened in the plains. At that time, the dragon's princess and the black dragons pretended to be Lin Yi and her disciple to lure you there. But in the end, they suffered a great loss in the hands of Yu and Hui. Not only were the bodies of the black dragons and the other 3 destroyed, but even the sunset divine bow and the other 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts fell into your hands. This is naturally a great joy for Qin Batian and Lu Jungyang, but for the other 2 sovereigns, this is undoubtedly a wake-up call. Your rise can no longer be stopped. You should already know the situation of the dragon-slaying palace. The 4 sovereigns are divided into 2 factions. The 2 factions have always been in a state of balance. However, your rise has undoubtedly broken this balance. Therefore, not only do the dragons regard you as their confidant, but the other 2 sovereigns also feel a strong threat from you. Ancestor Fiend sighed. I already expected this to happen. Qin Feiyang nodded. We also know that with your brain, you must have expected it. But there are some things that you can't stop. After the other 2 sovereigns felt the threat from you, they began to plan how to get rid of you. However, with Qin Batian and Lu Jungyang, they won't really do anything to you. So, they thought of a compromise to weaken your strength. Ancestor Fiend said. Weaken my strength? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Yes. What really scared them was the kill formula, the sunset divine bow, and the other 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts. But the kill formula is your own divine art. It's inconvenient for them to snatch it. So, they targeted the sunset divine bow and the other 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts. As long as they can get these 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts from you, your strength will be greatly weakened. Ancestor Fiend said. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang vaguely had an answer in his heart. He said, they want to use the mermaid princess and the others to get me to hand over the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts. That's right. They had this plan a long time ago, so they have been secretly monitoring the mermaid princess and the others. Because they all know that you care about them. Only they can make you hesitate. So the two sovereigns will definitely not let them return to you easily. Just when Lu Xingyang returned to the dragon-slaying palace and found them, these people finally took action. Ancestor Fiend sighed. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands and asked, "What happened to them?" "Don't worry about that. With Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang, even if they took action, they wouldn't dare to really hurt the mermaid princess and the others. They just imprisoned them and negotiated with Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang. Give them the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts in exchange for the freedom of the mermaid princess and the others. Otherwise, they will be imprisoned forever." Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang have been negotiating with the other two sovereigns for the past 2 years. But these two sovereigns have never relented. It seems that they are determined to drag this out with us. Ancestor Fiend said. "These damn things." Qin Feiyang clenched his hands tightly, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Don't blame Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang for this. They only knew about it when the two sovereigns took action. You know Qin Batian's character. He always looks at the big picture, so he didn't tell you. And he also knows your temper. Once you know about this, you will definitely make a scene. Ancestor Fiend said. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "Where is the dragon-slaying palace?" Ancestor Fiend and the others looked at each other and shook their heads with bitter smiles. Sure enough, this matter couldn't be known to Qin Feiyang. "Tell me the location of the dragon-slaying palace, and I will let you enter the castle to cultivate," Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang's heart skipped a beat. He turned to look at Ancestor Fiend and Dong Xingyang. "Your offer is really tempting, but we can't tell you the location of the dragon-slaying palace. Because once you break into the dragon-slaying palace and have a falling out with the two sovereigns, you will definitely alarm the dragons. In this way, Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang's efforts over the years may be destroyed." Ancestor Fiend shook his head. "You have really become a nice guy." Mu Tianyang stared at Ancestor Fiend with dissatisfaction. "We can't ruin the big picture." Ancestor Fiend smiled faintly. After pondering for a while, he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "However, I can tell you the identities of the other two sovereigns." Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, and Dong Xingyang looked at Ancestor Fiend in shock. Didn't he just say that they couldn't ruin the big picture? Why did he tell Qin Feiyang the identities of the other two sovereigns in the blink of an eye? One had to know. The identities of these two sovereigns were more important than the location of the dragon-slaying palace. "Tell me." Qin Feiyang stared at Ancestor Fiend. Ancestor Fiend smiled and said, "Then does your offer still count?" "Yes. As long as you tell me, I will immediately give you my current coordinates." Qin Feiyang nodded. Ancestor Fiend said, "You have already met one of these two sovereigns." "Met him?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." Ancestor Fiend nodded. Qin Feiyang frowned. He had actually met him. The strength of the 4 sovereigns of the dragon-slaying palace was about the same as Ancestor Dragon. In his impression, there seemed to be no one else other than Yi Zhong. Could it be Yi Zhong? Qin Feiyang was surprised. But as soon as he said that, he began to regret it. If it was really Yi Zhong, then why did the ancestor give him the task to persuade Yi Zhong to join the dragon-slaying palace? Obviously, this person was not Yi Zhong. How could it be Yi Zhong? Ancestor Fiend smiled. Qin Feiyang frowned. If it was not Yi Zhong, then who else could be compared to Ancestor Dragon? Wait, could it be him? The figure of a young man in a fiery robe appeared in Qin Feiyang's mind. The Beast Emperor of the Internal Sea. This person's cultivation was similar to Yi Zhong's, similar to Ancestor Dragon's. Moreover, the task given to him by the ancestor was only to persuade Yi Zhong to join the dragon-slaying palace, but not to persuade the Beast Emperor to join the dragon-slaying palace. From this it could be seen, one of the 4 sovereigns of the dragon-slaying palace should be this Beast Emperor. It seems that you have already thought of it. That's right. This sovereign hidden in the dark is the Beast Emperor, who rules the internal sea. Ancestor Fiend said. Qin Feiyang asked, "What about the other one?" Ancestor Fiend smiled faintly. "You may be unfamiliar with the other one, the Chief Pavilion Master of the Treasure Pavilion." "So it's him." Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Ancestor Fiend said. Don't underestimate her, she is still a woman. Whether she is a man or a woman, if she provokes me, she will become a dead person. Qin Feiyang sneered. Haha. Domineering. Ancestor Fiend laughed loudly. I mean what I say. Right now, I am at the Black Tortoise Mountain outside the Holy Dragon City, come and meet me. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he gave the four of them the coordinates. Ancestor Fiend smiled and said, All right, we will go right away. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and asked, So fast, aren't you going to tell the ancestors? Is there a need for that? Ancestor Fiend smiled slightly, and the shadows of the four people dissipated. Qin Feiyang also put away the image crystal, looked up at Fire Lotus and asked, What do you think of this? Fire Lotus shook her head and said, Ancestor Fiend has no need to lie to you about this. That's what I think too. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then what do you plan to do? Fire Lotus asked. Since they have done something wrong, they naturally have to pay the price. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Fire Lotus smiled. No matter what Qin Feiyang did, she would support him unconditionally. Qin Feiyang said, Go clear a few courtyards and settle them down later. Okay. Speaking of which, it is also a great thing for us that these people have come to our side. Fire Lotus smiled. Indeed. Not to mention the Ancestor Fiend and Mu Tianyang's heaven-defying artifacts. Even Mu Qing's all-seeing eye will be of great help to us. If Dong Xingyang's Eye of Destiny can be opened, he will be invincible, Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus nodded. Chapter 2561. Qin Feiyang left the castle. After waiting for a while, the demon ancestor and the others arrived at Black Tortoise Mountain. You're here to welcome us personally. Mu Tianyang laughed. Are you trying to make your presence known all the time? Are you afraid that others won't notice you? Qin Feiyang frowned. Mu Tianyang's expression froze. What's wrong with this person? Did he eat gunpowder? He's insulting me the moment he sees me. Let me tell you, I can send you to the Black Tortoise world. But remember, if anyone dares to act recklessly, don't blame me for being ruthless. Qin Feiyang looked at the four of them and said. The demon ancestor smiled faintly. Don't worry about that. We're here purely to cultivate. That's good. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked suspiciously. Did you bring the heaven-defying artifacts? Of course. How can we be at ease letting them stay in the dragon-slaying palace? The demon ancestor said. All right then. Qin Feiyang nodded and prepared to send the four of them to the Black Tortoise world. Wait a moment. The demon ancestor waved his hand and asked, How do you plan to solve this matter? Although I don't advocate violence, sometimes violence is the best way to solve a problem, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The four of them looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. It was indeed this guy's style. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the four of them to the Black Tortoise world. Then, he flew to the top of a mountain and looked in the direction of the inland sea. Time passed by breath. After dawn, clang, in the sky, with a loud sound a stone door opened. Two silhouettes walked out cheerfully. It was Huai and the five-clawed golden dragon. When they saw Qin Feiyang standing at the top of the mountain, the two of them couldn't help but be startled. Huai kept the spatial gate and landed beside Qin Feiyang. He asked suspiciously, Why are you standing here alone? You're back. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses and looked at the two of them. What's the situation? The opening of the space-time gate caused such a huge commotion, yet you didn't notice it. Huai and the five-clawed golden dragon looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Why did it feel like this person had a lot on his mind? How much celestial immortal wine did you make? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Almost emptied the wine cellar of the Heaven Immortal Tower. Huai chuckled. Qin Feiyang shook his head speechlessly. These two were really drunkards. You look so absent-minded. Did something happen? Huai looked at him suspiciously. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. She briefly described the situation of the mermaid princess and the others. Bastard. He had heard of it. Huai was also furious. He was a famous emperor of the dragon-slaying palace. Yet he had done such a shameless thing. The five-clawed golden dragon also shook his head. He was quite familiar with the beast emperor. However, he never expected that the Beast Emperor was one of the 4 emperors of the dragon-slaying palace. Qin Feiyang took the face-restoring pill and recovered his true appearance. He smiled and said, "Let's go to the inland sea. Don't be impulsive." Although the Beast Emperor is the emperor of the dragon-slaying palace, the dragons don't know that. If you attack the Beast Emperor, the dragons will definitely not sit back and watch. But if you reveal the Beast Emperor's identity, it will definitely affect the dragon-slaying palace. The dragon-slaying palace was founded by Qin Batian and Lu Zhengyang. I don't know how much effort they have put in. You can't destroy their efforts. Hui hurriedly said. I know, but if I don't vent my anger, I will feel uncomfortable. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands, opened an altar, and directly stepped on it. Hui smiled helplessly and recovered his true appearance. As for the 5-clawed golden dragon, he changed his appearance slightly and put on a mask. The inland sea. In the battle back then, the inland sea was destroyed. Not even a drop of seawater was left. But now, the dry inland sea was filled with seawater again. There were also countless sea beasts. These seawater and sea beasts were all transferred from the North Sea and the other 4 seas. The sovereign divine realm had also disappeared. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 stood on the shore. The waves surged one after another, hitting the shore with deafening sounds. Have you really thought about it? Hui asked. There's nothing to think about? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, the sunset divine bow and the other 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts appeared. Why did you come to the inland sea again? The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit was shocked. Qin Feiyang didn't answer. Instead he asked, are there any restrictions when the sovereign divine realm opens? There are restrictions. It can only be opened once every 10 years. Each time, it can last for half a year. The artifact spirit said. It hasn't been 10 years since the last time. In other words, we just have to be careful of the sovereign divine weapon. Qin Feiyang whispered. What are you trying to do? The artifact spirit was suspicious. The 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts didn't know what had happened in the dragon-slaying palace. Kill the Beast Emperor. Qin Feiyang said word by word. The 5-clawed golden dragon sighed and said, I know where the Beast Emperor lives. Come with me. Whoosh. Immediately, Qin Feiyang, Hui, and the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts followed the 5-clawed golden dragon and flew toward the depths of the inland sea. It's Qin Feiyang, Hui, and the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts. What are they doing in the inland sea? When the sea beasts in the inland sea saw Qin Feiyang and the others, their expressions changed drastically. Although they had migrated here from the 4 seas, they had long been aware of everything that had happened in the inland sea. These people were demons that couldn't be provoked. The Beast Emperor is not far from the Divine Dragon Island. We have to end this quickly, the 5-clawed golden dragon warned. About half an hour later, a palace surrounded by flames was suspended in the air above the sea. One could feel a terrifying divine power from afar. That palace was a legendary divine artifact. That's the Beast Emperor's palace. The 5-clawed golden dragon pointed at the palace and said. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he shouted, Sunset Divine Bow, destroy it. Boom. The Sunset Divine Bow immediately released a world-destroying aura, followed by the appearance of an arrow, which rushed madly toward the palace. Inside the palace, a young man in a fiery robe was sitting on a chair with his eyes closed to recuperate. Just as the Sunset Divine Bow was released, the young man in a fiery robe suddenly opened his eyes and rushed out of the palace without hesitation. Boom! Just as the young man in a fiery robe left, the arrow bombarded the palace. Accompanied by an earth-shaking explosion, the palace was reduced to ashes on the spot. The young man in a fiery robe looked at the shattered palace, and his face sank. He then looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and frowned. What are you doing? Don't you know what I want to do? Before the dragons come, I'll kindly advise you to keep a low profile, and don't do anything that brings about your own destruction. Kill him, Qin Feiyang shouted. The young man in a fiery robe's pupils contracted. What did that mean? Could it be that this kid already knew his identity? Clang. But he didn't have time to think about it. The sunset divine bow and the other divine artifacts were already rushing toward him. The young man in a fiery robe looked rather flustered. You have to know, these were the 10 great divine artifacts. Even with his cultivation, he would only lose his life. Stop it for this sovereign. But suddenly, a cold shout sounded. Then, a terrifying dragon aura surged toward them. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look, and saw a hazy silhouette flying towards him at lightning speed. It was none other than Long Zun. But Qin Feiyang didn't stop him. The 10 great divine artifacts didn't stop, and attacked the young man in a fiery robe. Ah! With a painful scream, the body of the young man in a fiery robe was immediately shattered in the void. Even his divine soul had been torn apart. That divine soul turned out to be a Qilin. In other words, the true body of the young man in a fiery robe was a fire Qilin. And next to the divine soul, there was a black ancient mirror suspended in the air. Fire Qilin? Huoyi was stunned. His aura is very unfamiliar to me. It should have nothing to do with the fire Qilin that I know. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at the black ancient mirror. That's his supreme artifact. The 5-clawed golden dragon transmitted its voice. Supreme artifact. Huoyi's spirit shook and instantly rushed to the front of the divine soul, grabbing the black ancient mirror and the fiery robe young man's divine soul. I know. You must be like the other great ancestral dragons, splitting your divine soul in advance. I can't kill you, but it's good to collect some interest. Huoyi chuckled and suddenly clenched his 5 fingers. The divine soul was immediately annihilated, but the black ancient mirror in his hand was still struggling. Obviously, as Huoyi expected, the beast emperor didn't die. At this moment, it was activating the black ancient mirror, trying to break free from Huoyi's clutches. But Huoyi held it firmly and turned to the side of the sunset god Bao. Without waiting for Huoyi to speak, the sunset god Bao released a wisp of divine sense and directly erased the blood contract of the black ancient mirror. Damn it! A roar suddenly sounded from the depths of Divine Dragon Island. The owner of this voice was the young man in a fiery robe. Let's go. Qin Feiyang glanced at Long Zun, then took Huoyi, the 5-clawed golden dragon, and the 10 heaven-defying artifacts and turned to leave. Swish! Long Zun's speed was extremely fast, and in a few flashes, he was in front of them. Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly, "This time, I'm not targeting you dragons. I'm here for the Internal Seas Beast Emperor. Please step aside. The Beast Emperor belongs to us dragons. If you target him, isn't that the same as targeting us dragons?" Long Zun shouted. "Then what do you want?" Qin Feiyang said indifferently. "The Internal Sea is not a place where you can come and go as you please." After Long Zun finished speaking, a terrifying aura slowly spread out. The sovereign divine domain can only be opened once every 10 years. Are you sure you want to start a war with me now? Qin Feiyang sneered. Long Zun's eyes sank, and he couldn't help but hesitate. Indeed, starting a war at this time wouldn't benefit the dragons. Because if the sunset god Bao and the other heaven-defying artifacts were unsealed and fully awakened, Divine Dragon Island would be the first to bear the brunt. Just as Long Zun was hesitating, Qin Feiyang's group of 3 and the 10 heaven-defying artifacts walked past Long Zun. Actually, you don't have to be so conflicted. Isn't the Nether King's hell about to open? Don't worry, I will definitely go. At that time, we will settle this once and for all in the Nether King's hell. Qin Feiyang said without turning his head. You. Long Zun looked at Qin Feiyang's back in bewilderment. Are you wondering how I found out about your scheme? This kind of thing, it's easy to figure it out. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he quickly disappeared at the end of the sea. All right. As you wish, we will settle this once and for all in the Nether King's hell. Long Zun whispered, then turned and left. Chapter 2563. Dragon God Mountain Range. Under the night sky, the mountains and rivers were dead silent. Qin Feiyang and the others flew out of the inland sea and stood above a mountain ridge. What's next? The 5-clawed golden dragon asked. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Feng Daji appeared. After all these years, Feng Daji's body had already been rebuilt. And he was still trying to reach the initial imperishable realm, because he knew that Qin Feiyang's enemies would become more and more terrifying. A half-step imperishable realm cultivator would not be able to stand out in the near future. So if he didn't want to be eliminated, he had to work hard to become stronger. But this was only his one-sided thought. In fact, for Qin Feiyang, strength was not important. What was important was loyalty. As long as one was loyal, no matter who it was, he would not abandon them. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Daji and said, "You take 2 heaven-defying divine artifacts to the west. Hui, you and Little Gold go to the south and east respectively. Just in case, each of you take a heaven-defying divine artifact. Your target is the treasure pavilions in the south, west, and east. Destroy as many as you can as quickly as possible." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. Haha. Interesting. Hui and the 5-clawed golden dragon suddenly laughed. Qin Feiyang said, "Before dawn, come to the treasure pavilion in Holy Dragon City and find me." "No problem." The 5-clawed golden dragon nodded and looked at Feng Daji. "Do you know the coordinates of the west?" "Of course." Feng Daji smiled. As a half-step imperishable realm expert, what place in the divine land had he not been to? He did not know the 4 major divisions like the back of his hand, but he also knew the distribution of the major cities. "Let's go," Qin Feiyang said. "Then do you want to take some treasures back?" Hui smiled. "Up to you." Qin Feiyang smiled. Haha. Hui laughed, grabbed the golden sword, and opened the altar to leave. The 5-clawed golden dragon glanced at the remaining 9 divine weapons. Finally, his eyes locked onto the blood-red dagger. He smiled sinisterly and said, "I like you better. I also admire you." The artifact spirit grinned ferociously. The 5-clawed golden dragon grabbed the crimson dagger and started to leave the altar. Feng Daji looked at the bronze halberd and the black iron fan. He cupped his hands and said, "Please take care of me." With a clanging sound, the 2 heaven-defying divine weapons disappeared into Feng Daji's chi-si. "Young master, let's go." Feng Daji looked at Qin Feiyang and said. Qin Feiyang said, "Do you know why I gave you 2 heaven-defying divine tools?" "I know. It's because my cultivation is weaker than Hui and the 5-clawed golden dragon." Feng Daji said. "Not bad. So you have to be careful. It's best if the treasure pavilion can be destroyed, but if not, don't force it. Your own life is the most important thing. If it reaches a point of no return, there's no harm in unlocking the seal on the heaven-defying divine artifact." Qin Feiyang said. "Yes." Feng Daji respectfully replied. "This subordinate will definitely not disappoint young master's expectations." With that, Feng Daji also opened an altar and disappeared from Qin Feiyang's sight. "What about us?" The Sunset Divine Bow's artifact spirit asked. "Don't be idle. Go to the treasure pavilions of the major cities in the north. As for me, I'll go to the treasure pavilion of the Holy Dragon City and have some tea." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Understood." The Sunset Divine Bow's artifact spirit smiled and said, "Brothers, let's go." Clang! The 6 divine artifacts immediately turned into streams of light and disappeared into the horizon. Beast Emperor, Chief Pavilion Master. Although I can't expose your identities, I have 10,000 ways to make you regret it. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly, opened an altar, and disappeared without a trace. Divine Dragon Island. Somewhere, the ancestral dragons surrounded the fire-clothed youth. But at this moment, the fire-clothed youth was just a wisp of divine consciousness. "Why did he want to kill you?" The ancestral dragons looked at the fire-clothed youth in puzzlement. "How would I know why he went crazy?" The fire-clothed youth said angrily. But in his heart, he was very clear. It was just that he couldn't figure out how Qin Feiyang knew. Could it be that Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang leaked the secret? But that couldn't be right. For the safety of the Dragon Slayer Palace, Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang couldn't have told Qin Feiyang. What was going on? Whoosh! At this moment, Longzuan came through the air and landed in front of the group. "Sir, how's the situation?" The ancestral dragons quickly surrounded him. "He's already gone. But there's a problem that I don't understand." Qin Feiyang said frankly that this time, he's not targeting us dragons but the Beast Emperor. Beast Emperor, Can you give me an explanation? Longzuan looked at the fire-clothed youth and asked. I don't know either. The fire-clothed youth looked aggrieved. The ancestral dragon of the Black Dragon clan asked. Did you offend him in any way? Offend him? Speaking of offending him, I haven't offended him. Maybe it's because I'm in the same group as you. The fire-clothed youth was helpless. Longzuan said unhappily. From your tone, it's us who implicated you? Isn't that the case? He came to kill me all of a sudden. He must have been implicated by you. Maybe. He knows our plan, so he wants to get rid of one or two of us before the Nether King's Hell opens. In this way, when he enters the Nether King's Hell, he will have one or two fewer opponents. The fire-clothed youth said. He knows our plan. That's impossible. The ancestral dragons shook their heads. No, he does know. He also said that he wants to settle things with us in the Nether King's Hell. Longzuan said. How did he know? Could it be Yizhong who leaked the secret? The ancestral dragons were bewildered. You guys are too imaginative. In order to deal with Qin Feiyang, Yizhong put in a lot of effort. You guys actually suspect him. If he hears this, won't he be bitterly disappointed? This kind of thing, if you think about it a little, you will know that it must have been deduced by Qin Feiyang. It's not like you guys haven't experienced Qin Feiyang's cleverness. Let's talk about it later. Isn't there still Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang secretly helping him? The fire-clothed youth rolled his eyes. What a bunch of pigs. They actually suspected Yizhong. This plan was originally planned by Yizhong. How could he do something that would harm himself and benefit others? Longzuan also stared at the ancestral dragons and said indifferently, All right, go and get ready. Yes. The ancestral dragons retreated respectfully. Longzuan looked at the fire-clothed youth and said, Can you enter the Nether King's Hell tomorrow? The fire-clothed youth hesitated. He had always planned to enter. But now his physical body was destroyed, and only a wisp of his divine soul was left. With his cultivation, it would be difficult to condense a complete divine soul without tens of thousands of years. Not to mention, it would take a long time to reconstruct his physical body. In his current state, if he entered the Nether King's Hell, he would simply be courting death. Longzuan said, Don't force yourself if you can't go. I want to go in. This Qin Feiyang, I must kill him. The fire-clothed youth said in a deep voice. But you, Longzuan frowned. If he could use a spatial divine item, the fire-clothed youth could still go into seclusion to reconstruct his divine soul and physical body. But there were rules in the Nether King's Hell, and there was no way to use spatial divine items. When the fire-clothed youth's divine soul entered the Nether King's Hell, not to mention killing Qin Feiyang, he would not even be able to protect himself. I have an idea, the fire-clothed youth said. What idea? Longzuan was suspicious. The fire-clothed youth moved closer to Longzuan's ear and whispered a few words. When Longzuan heard this, he said in surprise, This is too risky. It's a little risky, but as long as I can kill Qin Feiyang, it's worth it. Besides, don't I have you guys to protect me? It's not a big problem. The fire-clothed youth waved his hand. I won't go. Longzuan shook his head. You won't go? The fire-clothed youth was stunned. Someone has to guard the divine land. What if we all go to the Nether King's Hell, and Qin Batian, and the others take the opportunity to stir up trouble? Longzuan was worried. The fire-clothed youth frowned and said, Qin Batian and the others might also enter the Nether King's Hell. He won't. Because I know him. He won't take the risk. Longzuan shook his head. The fire-clothed youth said, But if you don't go, I'm worried. What's there to worry about? Although your cultivation will be suppressed to the Nine Heavens realm in the Nether King's Hell, Qin Feiyang will also be greatly restricted. Qin Feiyang's biggest reliance is the heaven-defying divine artifact and the kill formula. And these can't be used in the Nether King's Hell. Don't tell me you can't kill him with your strength. Longzuan said lightly. That's true. The fire-clothed youth nodded. Longzuan said, All right, hurry up and prepare. It's best if the target you choose is at the peak Nine Heavens realm. This will give you some protection. I know. The fire-clothed youth nodded and turned into a stream of light, sweeping out of Divine Dragon Island like lightning and disappearing. Holy Dragon City. The moonlight shone. The huge city was extremely quiet. The treasure pavilion, which was closed for the day, was dead silent. Whoosh! Suddenly, a white figure descended in the sky above the treasure pavilion. It was Qin Feiyang. Glancing at the empty streets and the quiet treasure pavilion, Qin Feiyang took out a tea table and a recliner and placed it in the air. Sitting on the recliner, he took out a tea set and leisurely made tea. But this time, he didn't use the tea leaves brewed by Fire Lotus. Because Yi Zhong also knew about this tea. If he made this tea now, once Yi Zhong found out, he would definitely suspect his identity. He had only chosen a relatively ordinary type of tea. Next, he lay on the recliner, drinking tea while admiring the moonlight. Look, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why is there a person sitting in the sky above the treasure pavilion? Soon, a few passers-by noticed Qin Feiyang when they passed by the street beside the treasure pavilion. I'm not playing tricks on me. It's indeed a person. What is he doing? He's actually drinking tea in the sky above the treasure pavilion. No. Why do I feel that he looks familiar? It seems to be. It's Qin Feiyang. A few people stopped on the street with a suspicious look and looked up. When they saw Qin Feiyang's face, they couldn't help but change their expressions. That's right. It's him. Qin Feiyang, who snatched the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts of the dragons, severely injured the ancestral dragons, and was not even afraid of Longzuan. Chapter 2564. I heard that he is the young lord of the Dragon Slayer Palace. Why is he sitting here so brazenly? What does he want to do? Isn't he afraid that the dragons will find trouble with him? The few of them were bewildered. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at them. He smiled and said, "Do you want to come up? I'll treat you to some tea." No need, no need. The few of them hurriedly waved their hands, and like frightened rabbits, they ran away like a wisp of smoke. Am I that scary? Qin Feiyang felt very helpless. Compared to the dragons, he was much kinder. What? Qin Feiyang has appeared. Where is he? It can't be. Has he eaten the guts of a leopard? He is actually sitting above the treasure pavilion and drinking tea openly? Hell is about to open. There must be something fishy about him appearing at this time. Let's go and take a look. Very soon, the quiet holy dragon city was in an uproar. Everyone walked out one after another, their hearts filled with curiosity as they rushed towards the treasure pavilion. In less than an hour, the streets near the treasure pavilion were crowded with people. The surrounding void was also packed with people, making it extremely crowded. It's really him. People mumbled. They could not help but admire him. In terms of courage, this man was really unparalleled in the world. This was because since ancient times, no one had dared to appear openly after offending the dragons. Not to mention sitting there and drinking tea leisurely. After the people arrived, no one left. This was because they wanted to know what Qin Feiyang wanted to do. Sitting above the treasure pavilion. Could it be that his target this time was the treasure pavilion? This lawless guy. It was not enough that he had looted the city lord's mansions of the major cities. He also wanted to target the treasure pavilion. Whoosh! Suddenly, a white-haired old man descended above the treasure pavilion. It's him. Yi Zhong. He came really quickly. Everyone's pupils constricted. Qin Feiyang also sat up straight and turned to look at Yi Zhong with a faint smile on his face. Not long ago, you barged into the inner sea and destroyed the beast emperor's body and soul. Now you're brazenly coming to the treasure pavilion to sit here and drink tea. You've got guts. Yi Zhong said angrily. What? Not long ago, he broke into the inland sea again. He even destroyed the beast emperor's body and divine soul? Oh my god, what is he trying to do? Everyone was shocked to the extreme. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Yi Zhong, Grand Hall Master of the Dragon God Palace, I've heard a lot about you. Boom. Yi Zhong directly released his aura. Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup and took a sip. He smiled and said, Chief Palace Master Yi, are you sure you want to make a move? There are a lot of people here right now. He's indeed a madman. He's facing Yi Zhong, Grand Hall Master, without batting an eyelid. People murmured. Yi Zhong raised his eyebrows. I've never had a chat with Grand Hall Master over tea. Why don't we sit down and chat for a while? Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and another recliner appeared. Yi Zhong looked at the recliner and frowned. What's this kid up to? Don't worry. The purpose of my appearance this time has nothing to do with the Dragon God Palace and the dragons. I'm not here to fight with you either. I'm just here to drink tea and enjoy the moonlight. Well, the moonlight in the Divine Land is pretty good, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yi Zhong was silent, as if he wanted to see through Qin Feiyang. However, in his eyes, Qin Feiyang was always covered with a veil, appearing mysterious and unfathomable. All right then, Grand Hall Master, you can just stand there. However, you have to stand steadily. After all, you're already so old. Don't sprain your back. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, took out a teacup, brewed tea, and placed it opposite him. He had to be polite to others. As for Yi Zhong, it was Yi Zhong's business whether he wanted to sit down and drink this cup of tea. I'm not so old that I'll sprain my back. However, this old man really wants to see what kind of tricks you can play. Yi Zhong snorted coldly, restrained his aura, took a step forward, sat opposite Qin Feiyang, picked up the teacup and took a sip. How's this tea? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Low-grade tea is not qualified for me to judge, Yi Zhong said lightly. In that case, Grand Hall Master, you have good tea? Why don't you let me try it? Qin Feiyang was curious. You're not qualified. Yi Zhong smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh and said lightly, I think it's Grand Hall Master who can't afford it. What a joke. All right, since you insist on humiliating yourself, I'll fulfill your wish and let you see what a real top-grade tea is. Yi Zhong took out a teapot. As soon as he opened it, a strong tea fragrance immediately wafted out. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Wasn't this the tea that he gave to Yi Xuer's great-grandfather? Why would it be with Yi Zhong? Wait a minute. He looked at the tea leaves in the teapot. It turned out that there was only a small pot. Obviously, this was what Yi Zhong had received from the old man. He didn't expect that Yi Zhong was also a tea lover. How is it? Yi Zhong personally brewed a pot of tea, and looked at Qin Feiyang proudly. Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup, tasted it gently, and said with a smile, Not bad, not bad. It's indeed a top-grade tea. This kid is really good at pretending. Yi Zhong is the Grand Hall Master of the Dragon God Palace. His status is comparable to the various ancestral dragons. How can someone with such a status not have good tea on him? Everyone shook their heads. However, they didn't know that although Yi Zhong's tea was good, it was also a gift from Qin Feiyang. Yi Zhong said, If you like it, I'll definitely give you some. That's not necessary. Anyway, drinking tea is just a hobby. I don't like it that much. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Indeed. In terms of tea, you're too far behind my disciple. Yi Zhong said proudly. Your disciple? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Suddenly, he patted his head and said, Are you talking about Li Bu'er? You know him too? Yi Zhong was surprised. Of course I know him. This disciple of yours is quite famous in the Divine Land. Speaking of which, I kind of admire him, because he's the only person I've seen in the Dragon God Palace who dares to challenge the dragons. I think it's a waste for someone like him to stay in the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yi Zhong's pupil shrank, and he said, Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't think about him. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a smile, I didn't expect the Grand Hall Master to care so much about Li Bu'er. It seems that this is a good breakthrough. Breakthrough? Yi Zhong's eyes darkened and he said, What do you want to do? Qin Feiyang took a sip of tea and said with a smile, To tell you the truth, I'm very interested in you. What do you mean? Yi Zhong frowned. Qin Feiyang said to himself, I mean, I want you to betray the dragons and come to my side. Haha. Yi Zhong suddenly looked up and laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. What are they talking about? The crowd looked at Yi Zhong, who suddenly laughed, and their faces were full of suspicion. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, Does the Grand Hall Master think it's funny? It's more than funny. It's a joke. Let's not talk about my status in the Divine Land. Let's talk about my cultivation. Great achievement, immortality. I've even comprehended the power of law. This old man is really puzzled. Where did you find the courage to say such words that overestimate yourself? Yi Zhong's face was full of sarcasm. It's precisely because your cultivation is strong that I'm interested in you. If it were a peerless god or a ninth heaven realm cultivator, do you think I would take a second look at him? Qin Feiyang laughed secretly. Yi Zhong didn't say anything and sneered. As for the power of law you mentioned, there's really nothing to show off. Qin Feiyang shook his head again. Yi Zhong wanted to scold him immediately, but he suddenly remembered that this man seemed to have comprehended the power of law of light. He was only a peerless god, but he had already comprehended the power of law. Thinking about it, he really had nothing to show off. You've been with the dragons for so many years. You know the character of the dragons better than anyone. Is it worth it to protect these beasts? Of course you're not afraid. After all, you have status and strength. No one dares to say anything in front of you. But have you ever thought about your descendants? What kind of infamy will they bear? I guess there'll probably be some lackeys, scum, hawks and dogs, the shame of mankind. Others want to go down in history in their lives. But what about you, Grand Hall Master? To be honest, I really don't understand. You clearly have the ability to choose. But why do you choose the path of infamy? Qin Feiyang thought to himself. Yi Zhong pondered for a moment and said, in this world, no one has the right to judge others. You're right. No one has the right to judge others. But if they want to judge, can you control their mouths? Go down in history and infamy for 10,000 years. You have to choose carefully between these two paths. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Yi Zhong didn't think much of it and sneered. I know you must have your own reasons for doing this. But you have to think more about Yi Shuai and your old father. You're the one who's wrong, not them. It doesn't seem fair to let them suffer the disdain of the world, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yi Zhong stared at Qin Feiyang in surprise. He knows about my father and Shuai. During the years I was in the Divine Land, I wasn't always cultivating in seclusion. Sometimes, I would investigate some things that interested me. For example, your family situation. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. Yi Zhong couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. This guy has been secretly investigating me all this time. And judging from his tone, he already knows my family situation like the back of his hand. Why have you always let Yi Shuai and your father live in seclusion in the mountains? It's actually very simple. You also know that the world will curse them, so you don't want them to show their faces in public. But do you think that by doing this they won't feel pressured? They actually feel pressured too. It's because of their concern, trust, and respect for you that they silently bear this pressure. If you really think about them, if you really want them to live a comfortable and carefree life, then there's only one way. Leave the dragons and do what you should do. Qin Feiyang said with a voice transmission. Chapter 2565. As Qin Feiyang said these words, Yi Zhong couldn't help but retract his hands into his sleeves and clench them tightly. No matter how hard-hearted a person was, it was impossible to remain indifferent after hearing these words. Not to mention, Yi Zhong still cared about his family very much. These words made him fall into a dilemma. In his heart, there was also a sense of guilt and self-blame. Although everything you do can bring them a better life, in fact, you are increasing their burden. And this burden is not just a little bit. Think about yourself. You are not only Yi Shuai's grandfather, but also the son of the old master and Yi Cheng's elder brother. You are holding multiple positions. I want to ask, can you bear to do this? Qin Feiyang also noticed Yi Zhong's abnormality and continued to persuade him. Enough! Yi Zhong suddenly shouted and stood up, glaring at Qin Feiyang. What? Did I say something wrong? Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked straight at him. You're right. But since ancient times loyalty and filial piety can't be combined. Yi Zhong said secretly. Then do you think loyalty to the dragons is really loyalty? Qin Feiyang asked secretly. Whether it is or not, I have my own judgment in my heart. Yi Zhong snorted coldly. Yes. In your opinion, loyalty to the dragons is also loyalty. But you don't know that in the eyes of the world, you are helping the evildoers. Are you worthy of the word loyalty? In my opinion, You are simply a disloyal, unfilial, heartless, and unrighteous person. Qin Feiyang shouted secretly. Every word was like a gem. What did you say? Yi Zhong stared at him fiercely. Because of you, your father has to bear the infamy. This is unfilial. You help the dragons and harm your own kind. This is heartless. You don't care about Yi Cheng, and let him become the dragon's lackey with you. This is unrighteous. You have the power to save the world, but you don't know how to repent. You insist on being an accomplice to a villain. This is disloyalty. So disloyal, unfilial, heartless, and unjust. How can you still have the face to say that loyalty and filial piety cannot be fulfilled at the same time since ancient times? Have you asked your family if they really need the superior life that you've exchanged for with your pride and dignity? Qin Feiyang bellowed. Yi Zhong's eyes trembled, and his heart sank into an unprecedented panic. Think about it. What should a person do in life? Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. What should a person do in life? Yi Zhong mumbled. He was confused, hesitant, and at a loss. But suddenly, he took a deep breath and returned to his seat. He shook his head and said, You're really powerful. You almost destroyed my mental state. Wrong. I'm not trying to destroy your state of mind. I'm trying to reason with you. Take your time to think about it. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Yi Zhong smiled coldly, and then fell silent. Qin Feiyang did not say anything else. He lay on the chair and sipped his tea leisurely. This kind of thing could not be rushed, because if he was too anxious, it would only backfire. And now, although Yi Zhong did not admit it, a seed had been planted in his heart. This seed would slowly germinate with the passage of time. After the germination, it would be the best time to persuade Yi Zhong. In other words, he was waiting for an opportunity now, an opportunity to completely change Yi Zhong. Qin Feiyang sat above the treasure pavilion in Holy Dragon City and drank tea. Now almost everyone in the major cities in the north knew about it. Whoosh! Soon, a chubby fatso in luxurious clothes appeared. This person was the supervisor of the treasure pavilion. It's really Qin Feiyang. Looking at Qin Feiyang in the sky, the supervisor of the treasure pavilion trembled and hurriedly flew up. He frowned and said, Qin Feiyang, why are you doing this? Holy Dragon City was so big, and there were so many places to drink tea. Why did he come to the treasure pavilion to drink tea? Those who did not know would think that the treasure pavilion had some relationship with Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, The air here is good, and it happens to be in the center of Holy Dragon City. Drinking tea here, you can see the whole Holy Dragon City. The City Lord Mansion is the center of Holy Dragon City. The supervisor of the treasure pavilion said helplessly, There are too many people in the City Lord Mansion. I don't like it. And I'm afraid that once I reach the City Lord Mansion, I won't be able to resist taking action on their treasure vault and herb farm. Qin Feiyang laughed. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Was there anyone more arrogant than this? It was as if the City Lord Mansion's herb farm and treasure vault were his back garden that he could take whenever he wanted. Brother Qin, look, our treasure pavilion still needs to do business. Can you drink tea somewhere else? I have 10 billion divine crystals here. Take it as a treat. The supervisor of the treasure pavilion took out a cosmos bag and ran to Qin Feiyang with a flattering smile. 10 billion divine crystals for tea? This fatso is really generous. What do you know? This is called taking money to avoid disaster. As long as we can send this plague away, not to mention 10 billion divine crystals, even if it's 100 billion, the treasure pavilion will definitely pay. It's really infuriating to compare oneself to others. We can't even earn 1 billion divine crystals after working hard. But this guy just sits here and has 10 billion divine crystals delivered to him. When will I be as lucky as him? Everyone looked at the cosmos bag in the supervisor's hand with envy. However, Qin Feiyang did not even look at it and said indifferently, Do you think I'm a beggar? Not enough. I have more. As long as you are magnanimous and leave the treasure pavilion. The supervisor hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang said, I heard that you've been auctioning 3 divine life pills with dragon-shaped core qi recently? Yes. Everyone in the north knows about this. The supervisor nodded repeatedly. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Then your treasure pavilion must have made a lot of money. Not bad, not bad. The supervisor smiled flatteringly. But his expression suddenly changed and he asked, do you want the divine life pills? You should have said so earlier. Wait a moment, I'll go get them for you. Not interested. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Not interested. The supervisor was stunned. He didn't want divine crystals or divine pills. What did he want? What a joke. Those divine pills were refined by Qin Feiyang. Why would he want them? Sorry, I'm not interested no matter how many divine crystals or divine pills there are. If you really want to treat me to tea, then give me a few trillion divine crystals. Qin Feiyang chuckled. What? Divine crystals? A few trillion? This guy's appetite is too big. Everyone was dumbfounded. That was a few trillion soul stones. Even the steward couldn't take out that much. The treasure pavilion must have some. But with so many divine crystals, how could the supervisor dare to make the decision? The supervisor couldn't help but be stunned and said with a wry smile, Brother Qin, you're making things difficult for me. I won't make things difficult for you. But don't continue to be long-winded here. Qin Feiyang said lightly. The supervisor nodded repeatedly and said, I won't be long-winded or long-winded. But you have to tell me what you want, right? I'm just sitting here and drinking tea. Why do you have so many questions? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Is this just a cup of tea? The supervisor wanted to cry but had no tears. Go and ask the divine land if they don't know Qin Feiyang. Why would he come here to drink tea? What should he do? If this god of plagues didn't leave, something big would happen sooner or later. Buzz. All of a sudden, the sound of the image crystal sounded. The supervisor glanced at Qin Feiyang and Yi Zhong and took out the image crystal. A shadow appeared. Supervisor Wang, bad news. It was an old man in black. As soon as he saw the supervisor, he shouted. The supervisor's eyelids twitched and he hurriedly asked, What's wrong? The old man in black said, The treasure pavilion of Snow Dragon City has been destroyed. What did you say? The supervisor was stunned and shouted, Say it again. The treasure pavilion of Snow Dragon City has been destroyed. The treasures in the treasure pavilion have also been taken away. The old man in black said, It can't be. Who destroyed the treasure pavilion of Snow Dragon City and took away all the treasures? Who is so bold? Wait. It can't be him, can it? Everyone was shocked and looked at Qin Feiyang. Damn it, who did it? The supervisor was furious. Yes. It's a heaven-defying divine artifact. It seems to be the sunset bow. The old man in black said in horror. The sunset bow. Everyone's heart trembled, and they immediately looked at Qin Feiyang. Everyone in the divine land knew that the sunset bow and other heaven-defying divine artifacts had submitted to Qin Feiyang. It was really him. Why did he do this? Did the treasure pavilion offend him? The manager was also dumbstruck as he looked at Qin Feiyang. The old man in black asked anxiously, Supervisor Wang, what should we do? I don't dare to report it to the chief pavilion master. How do I know what to do? The supervisor roared at the old man in black and turned off the image crystal. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Brother Qin, I don't think the treasure pavilion has offended you. Why did you do this? Qin Feiyang smiled and said nothing. Buzz. At this time, the supervisor's image crystal vibrated again. Everyone looked at the supervisor again. The supervisor felt more and more uneasy. He activated the image crystal. A woman in black appeared. The woman in black immediately shouted, Supervisor Wang, bad news. The treasure pavilion of the Serpent City was destroyed by a heaven-defying divine artifact, and all the treasures were taken away. The treasure pavilion of the Serpent City was also visited by a heaven-defying divine artifact? Everyone was shocked. The supervisor also came to his senses after a long while. He looked at the woman in black and asked, Is it the heaven-defying divine artifact of the dragons? Yes, a black iron fan. But I remember that this divine artifact has fallen into the hands of Qin Feiyang? The woman in black said. I know. Snow Dragon City was also destroyed by the sunset bow, informed the chief pavilion master. It's not up to us to solve this problem. Tell the chief pavilion master that Qin Feiyang is in the treasure pavilion of the Holy Dragon City. The supervisor said helplessly. Qin Feiyang. The woman in black was shocked and immediately turned off the image crystal. But it was not over yet. Then, the supervisors of the treasure pavilions in other cities also sent messages one after another, saying that they had also been visited by a heaven-defying divine artifact. What is he going to do? Is he going to destroy all the treasure pavilions in the north? I don't remember him having a grudge against the treasure pavilion. The onlookers were discussing. They could not calm down. First, he looted the medicine fields and treasure vaults of the cities. Now he attacked the treasure pavilion. How could there be such a crazy person in the world? Chapter 2566. Yi Zhong sat calmly opposite Qin Feiyang. However, if one looked closely, one would find that there was a trace of suspicion in his eyes. In his memory, Qin Feiyang and the treasure pavilion did not have any grudges. They did not even have any interactions. But why would Qin Feiyang suddenly make such a big fuss? And it just so happened to be the day before the opening of hell. Was there something hidden in it? But as the person involved, Qin Feiyang remained calm. He drank tea and looked at the moon, feeling extremely comfortable. It was as if everything that happened had nothing to do with him. Let everyone speculate and talk. Boom. Soon, a terrifying divine aura descended upon the treasure pavilion. As soon as the divine power appeared, it rushed toward Qin Feiyang. But this, Qin Feiyang still acted as if he had nothing to do with it. However, everyone else was shocked, because this divine power was no weaker than Yi Zhong's. Who is it? Everyone was bewildered. Greetings, Chief Pavilion Master. Just as everyone was bewildered, a respectful and loud voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that the person who spoke was the supervisor of the treasure pavilion. Chief Pavilion Master. It turns out that the owner of this divine power is the Chief Pavilion Master of the treasure pavilion. This mysterious existence has always been elusive and elusive. Everyone thought that the Chief Pavilion Master of the treasure pavilion's status in divine prefecture was quite terrifying. And his strength was also extremely strong. What was Qin Feiyang trying to do? First, he offended the dragons, and now the treasure pavilion. Was he trying to make the world his enemy? Was he really not afraid of death? No matter how powerful he was, he could not offend the dragons and the treasure pavilion. Qin Feiyang, do you want to die? Accompanied by a bone-chilling cold shout, a woman descended in front of Qin Feiyang. She was shrouded in a mist, and it was difficult to see her face clearly. One could only see that she was wearing a light purple long dress. She had an excellent figure. However, his temperament gave off the feeling of an iceberg. The surging divine power also drowned Qin Feiyang. Even Yi Zhong, who was beside him, felt a great sense of danger. However, Qin Feiyang's expression did not change. He looked up at the Chief Pavilion Master and said with a smile, "Please sit." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and another chair appeared. Immediately after, he picked up the teapot and said with a faint smile, "This tea belongs to Chief Palace Master Yi. I shall present it to Buddha with borrowed flowers, and invite Chief Palace Master to try it." After saying that, he poured a cup and placed it on the coffee table in front of the chair. The Chief Pavilion Master slowly walked over and sat on the chair. He glanced at the teacup and then directly looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What do you want to do?" His tone was rather gloomy. "I'm not planning to do anything. Even though I've been in the Divine Land for so long, I haven't seen you yet, Chief Pavilion Master, so I wanted to ask you out," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "Let's meet." Everyone was helpless. Even Yi Zhong could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. How could he ask someone out like that? "Aren't you treating me like a fool? Speak human language," the Chief Pavilion Master said word by word, a little exasperated. "I'm speaking human language. What? Chief Pavilion Master, you don't understand? You can't even understand human language. Are you still human?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "How dare you?" The Chief Pavilion Master was furious. He actually humiliated her in public. Don't be angry, don't be angry. It's just a joke. Drink some tea first." "I've tasted this tea. It's not only the best tea, but also has the effect of smoothing the qi. How about you? Drink some first. I don't want to hurt my body when I get angry later, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. What do you mean? Everyone was stunned. Why did they feel that this person was still holding back a big move? The chief pavilion master glanced at Qin Feiyang gloomily, then looked at the teacup on the table again. He turned to Yi Zhong and said, Why are you here? Yi Zhong said, Such a big thing has happened. How can I not come to take a look? Then you should do something. After all, you were ordered to guard the north. Are you going to watch him do whatever he wants? The chief pavilion master said angrily. Back then, when he looted the major city lord mansions, didn't your treasure pavilion also watch the fun from the side? Yi Zhong said lightly. You. The chief pavilion master glared at him. But at this moment, buzz. There was a buzzing sound. The chief pavilion master raised his eyebrows and took out an image crystal. An old man in white appeared. What's the matter? The chief pavilion master shouted. The old man in white was already trembling with fear. When he saw the chief pavilion master so angry, his body suddenly trembled and he shouted, Lord, something bad has happened. Huh. Everyone was surprised. Yi Zhong also frowned. Wasn't this person the supervisor of a treasure pavilion in the east? Looking at him, could it be that the same thing was happening to the treasure pavilion in the east? Speak. The chief pavilion master said angrily. The white-haired old man quickly said, Our treasure pavilion in the east has been destroyed by evil people. Sure enough, Yi Zhong's heart trembled, and he glanced at Qin Feiyang. There was no suspense. It must be this guy behind the scenes. Who is it? How much did we lose? The chief pavilion master was also furious. At present, more than a dozen treasure pavilions have been destroyed. The perpetrator is Hui. The white-haired old man said. Hui, isn't he Qin Feiyang's accomplice? Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in unison. This guy was indeed holding back a big move. But why? Not only did he attack the treasure pavilion in the north, but he also attacked the treasure pavilion in the east. How much hatred did he have? Wait a minute. The treasure pavilions in the east and north were facing destruction at the same time. What about the west and south? Buzz. At this time, the buzzing of the image crystal sounded again. This time it was the treasure pavilion's manager. The treasure pavilion's manager quickly activated the image crystal, and a black-haired old woman appeared. The black-haired old woman hurriedly asked, Manager Wang, do you know where the chief pavilion master is? Why can't I contact him? Lord is right next to me. The treasure pavilion's manager turned the image crystal in his hand and pointed it at the chief pavilion master. Lord, something bad has happened. Feng Daji came to our south with a heaven-defying artifact and destroyed several of our treasure pavilions. We need support. The black-haired old woman looked at the chief pavilion master and said anxiously. The chief pavilion master's hands suddenly clenched tightly. Terrible, really terrible. Even the treasure pavilion in the south has been destroyed. It seems that the treasure pavilion in the west will not be spared. People muttered. Sure enough, soon, the people of the treasure pavilion in the west also sent a message. All the major treasure pavilions were destroyed by a masked man one after another. This masked man was naturally the five-clawed golden dragon. Moreover, in the time it took to send the message, more than a dozen treasure pavilions in the north were destroyed by the sunset bow and other 6 heaven-defying artifacts. Qin Feiyang, the chief pavilion master, suddenly stood up and murderous aura surged out. Clang. But at the same time, the rusty axe appeared. Pieces of rust fell off as 5-colored divine lights bloomed. They were like colorful butterflies that revolved around Qin Feiyang's body. The chief pavilion master's aura and murderous aura were immediately blocked. A heaven-defying artifact. The sunset bow and the other 6 heaven-defying artifacts, plus this heaven-defying artifact. He has 11 heaven-defying artifacts. No wonder even Yi Zhong didn't dare to take action. Qin Feiyang is now strong enough to compete with the dragons with his own ability. Not to mention that there is the mysterious Dragon Slayer Palace behind him. Everyone was shocked. They never expected that in just these years, Qin Feiyang had developed to such a terrifying extent in the Divine Land. Do you think a heaven-defying artifact can protect you? The chief pavilion master said gloomily. I may not be able to protect a heaven-defying artifact. But what about 10? As long as I give the order, the 10 heaven-defying artifacts of the sunset, Bao will immediately come to the Holy Dragon City. Do you think you will be a match for me then? Besides, isn't Chief Pavilion Master Yi still here? With him here, he won't allow us to unlock the seals of the heaven-defying artifacts. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. The Chief Pavilion Master said angrily, What do you want? Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup, moistened his throat, and said with a smile, Don't you know what I want? A trace of surprise appeared in the Chief Pavilion Master's eyes. Qin Feiyang turned his gaze to Yi Zhong and asked with a smile, Chief Pavilion Master Yi, how is the Beast Emperor now? Aren't you asking the obvious? Yi Zhong snorted. The Beast Emperor? The Chief Pavilion Master was suspicious. She really didn't receive any news about the Beast Emperor. Master, I heard from Yi Zhong that before Qin Feiyang came to the Treasure Pavilion, he went to the inland sea and destroyed the Beast Emperor's body and divine soul. The steward walked to the Chief Pavilion Master's ear and whispered. The Chief Pavilion Master's pupils suddenly shrank. Yi Zhong didn't know, but she immediately understood. Qin Feiyang was here for revenge. But how did Qin Feiyang know about the Mermaid Princess and the others? Did Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang tell him? But that couldn't be right. Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang were the most concerned about the overall situation. So they shouldn't have told Qin Feiyang. Damn it. Who was the one who told him? You should have guessed my purpose of destroying your treasure pavilion by now. I won't talk nonsense with you. I'll give you an hour. If I don't see what I want in an hour, then I promise you that your treasure pavilion will disappear from the divine land today. Qin Feiyang looked at the Chief Pavilion Master and said with a faint smile, How arrogant. How domineering. In this world, except for the dragons and the dragon-slaying palace, I'm afraid only this person dares to say such words in front of the Chief Pavilion Master. Everyone's eyes trembled. This person was indeed a descendant of Qin Batian. His style of doing things was unscrupulous. You want my treasure pavilion to disappear? The Chief Pavilion Master was also stunned and shouted angrily. You think too highly of yourself, don't you? Our treasure pavilion has been standing in the ancient world for so many years, and it's not just for show. Is that so? Then let's wait and see. Anyway, I have plenty of time. I can even play with you slowly without going to the Nether King's hell. Qin Feiyang chuckled. The Chief Pavilion Master's face darkened. It was already very obvious. This person would not give up until he achieved his goal today. What he wants? What does he want from the treasure pavilion? Yi Zhong looked at Qin Feiyang and the Chief Pavilion Master with a trace of suspicion in his old eyes. Also, why did Qin Feiyang deliberately mention the Beast Emperor? Could it be that the Beast Emperor had something to do with this? First, he tried to kill the Beast Emperor. Then he attacked the treasure pavilion. What kind of unknown secret was hidden in this? Chapter 2567. Qin Feiyang looked at the silent Chief Pavilion Master and said with a faint smile, Hurry up and decide. Time waits for no one. If you're late for even a second, a pavilion will be destroyed. Do you have the heart to do that? You. The Chief Pavilion Master trembled with anger. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Drink a cup of tea and calm down. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Everyone was speechless. Drinking tea could calm down? He was simply toying with the Chief Pavilion Master like a monkey. However, this person's courage and boldness were truly admirable. In fact, the student might even surpass the master. If Qin Batian were to compare with him, there was no comparison at all. Although Qin Batian founded the dragon-slaying palace, he had never brazenly sat here in front of Yi Zhong and the Chief Pavilion Master. Not to mention toying with the Chief Pavilion Master. The Chief Pavilion Master said, Aren't you afraid that I'll kill them? Afraid? Why should I be afraid? If you really dare to kill them, why did you imprison them? Believe it or not, if you dare to touch a single hair on them, not only me, but even the two ancestors won't let you go. Don't you have this bit of awareness? Qin Feiyang snickered. The Chief Pavilion Master was extremely angry, but there was nothing he could do. Although Qin Feiyang was the young master of the dragon-slaying palace, and could be considered a member of the dragon-slaying palace, she, a dignified sovereign, seemed to be worthless in front of Qin Feiyang. The most hateful thing was, he actually sent people to destroy her treasure pavilion. Not to mention anything else, they were in the same camp after all. Couldn't they discuss things? Take your time to think about it. I'm not in a hurry. Qin Feiyang held the teacup and tasted the tea by himself. His face was full of enjoyment as he said with a smile, "Chief Pavilion Master, the taste of this tea is really amazing. I suddenly want some. Can you give it to me?" If Yi Zhong was willing to give him some, Qin Feiyang wouldn't have to worry so much about it in the future. When Yi Zhong asked, he would say that he gave it to him. "In your dreams?" Yi Zhong snorted coldly. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and said, "Is your prejudice against me that big? This old man doesn't seem to be that close to you." Yi Zhong snorted through his nose. "That's sad. Looks like I really need to have a good chat with that disciple of yours. Not for anything else, but for this tea," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "What do you mean?" Yi Zhong's gaze darkened. "Wasn't this tea given to you by your disciple? Something's not right. He gave it to your father, and he even gave him a whole jar. You got these tea leaves from your father. Am I right?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "You're spying on me." Yi Zhong stood up and glared at Qin Feiyang. No. Spying on me doesn't sound good. You should understand that I'm concerned about you." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Concerned? Yi Zhong was burning with anger. The chief pavilion master rolled his eyes and looked at Yi Zhong. "Why don't we join forces and call Long Zun and the others over to kill him?" "Join forces?" Qin Feiyang laughed and said sarcastically, "Hell is about to open. Do you think Chief Pavilion Master Yi will do such a risky thing now?" Yi Zhong also looked at the Chief Pavilion Master coldly and pretended not to hear anything. The Chief Pavilion Master couldn't help but frown. Qin Feiyang said again, "But you're really ridiculous. You're the supreme sovereign of the Dragon Slayer Palace, but you actually want to join forces with the dragons. Kid, don't be too arrogant." The Chief Pavilion Master was so angry that he was about to go crazy. "You need to have the ability to be arrogant." "I do. But what about you? I'm afraid you don't even have a brain. You clearly know that the Mermaid Princess and the others are very important to me, but you still use them to threaten me. Aren't you touching my reverse scale? Do you know the price of angering me? I'm not even afraid of the dragons, let alone a little pavilion master like you. Give me an answer within 3 breaths. Otherwise, even if you invite the 2 ancestors, you won't be able to change my mind." Qin Feiyang shouted secretly. The chief pavilion master gnashed his teeth. He was getting more and more arrogant. He didn't take her, a supreme sovereign, seriously at all. 3. Qin Feiyang drank his tea and slowly transmitted his voice. 2. 1. When he said 1, Qin Feiyang slowly put down his teacup, and a trace of killing intent appeared in his eyes. The chief pavilion master's eyelids twitched. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Fu Tu and said with a smile, "Let the sunset divine bow and the others kill." Boom. As soon as these words came out, the chief pavilion master felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and her face couldn't help but turn pale. She originally thought that Qin Feiyang was just scaring her, and didn't take it seriously. But she didn't expect that. He really wanted to completely destroy the treasure pavilion. Then again, she didn't know Qin Feiyang at all. He didn't cause trouble, but he wasn't afraid of trouble either. If he was provoked, he would follow even the heavens. "Okay." The artifact spirit laughed. The chief pavilion master shivered and quickly said secretly, "Stop, I promise you." The corners of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted slightly, and he waved his hand to stop Fu Tu. He looked at the chief pavilion master and transmitted his voice with a smile. "I thought you had more backbone, but it turns out that you're just like this." Being humiliated again and again, the chief pavilion master couldn't help but have a trace of resentment in her eyes. Although these words were secretly transmitted and were not known to others, one must know that with her status and strength, she had never been in such a difficult position before. "I'll go to the Dragon Slayer Palace and release them. You also immediately tell Hui and the Sunset Divine Bow to stop. The Chief Pavilion Master said secretly. Of course. Tell them that I'll be waiting for them at Black Tortoise Mountain outside the city. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Okay. The Chief Pavilion Master took a deep look at Qin Feiyang, turned around, opened an altar and left. She left. What's going on? Could it be that the Chief Pavilion Master doesn't care about the life and death of the Treasure Pavilion? How is that possible? The Treasure Pavilion is the work of the Chief Pavilion Master. I think they must have made some secret deal. Everyone whispered. Qin Feiyang also got up and looked at Yi Zhong with a smile. I still have something to do, so I won't accompany the Chief Pavilion Master. See you later. Yi Zhong also got up and transmitted his voice. This old man will wait for you in the Nether King's hell. I definitely won't let you down. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and put away the tea table and reclining chair. He turned to look at Fu Tu and said to himself, Go and inform Sunset Godly Bao and the others to meet me at Black Tortoise Mountain. Okay. The weapon spirit of Fu Tu responded secretly and disappeared like a flash of lightning. Qin Feiyang also opened an altar and swaggered away. Until then, the steward let out a sigh of relief. He found that his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. Although Qin Feiyang didn't make a move from the beginning to the end, the invisible pressure emitted by his calmness made even him, a half-step invincible realm expert, a little overwhelmed. The rise of this man was unstoppable. Not even the dragons. He could even predict that the future of the ancient world would change greatly because of this man. After Qin Feiyang disappeared, Yi Zhong also left without saying a word. This little guy is really scary. Yeah. It's the first time I've seen such a terrifying young man. He didn't make a move, nor did he get angry. He just sat there calmly and planned his strategy. Who can compete with him? He's a rare talent, people muttered. Even though a world-shocking battle hadn't occurred, Qin Feiyang's godlike figure had already been imprinted in their hearts, and it was impossible to forget. Black Tortoise Mountain. Qin Feiyang took out an image crystal and notified Hui, the five-clawed golden dragon, and Feng Daji. Then he closed his eyes and waited silently. Whoosh! Soon, Hui, Feng Daji, and the five-clawed golden dragon returned. How was it? The three of them asked with a smile. If the Chief Pavilion Master didn't compromise, would I have called you back? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Then what does she look like? Hui was curious. What do you mean? You asked about her appearance as soon as you arrived? Qin Feiyang was stunned. I'm just curious. If she's a peerless beauty, then we have to be gentle. After all, we have to be gentle with her. Hui chuckled. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He turned to look at the five-clawed golden dragon and asked, Little Gold, did you see Shengguan Fenglan when you went to the northern region with him? Yes. He didn't let me go at first. But am I that obedient? Follow him stealthily. The five-clawed golden dragon glanced at Hui and laughed. Then the next time you have the chance to see Shengguan Fenglan, tell her that someone is flirting with women in the divine land, and is very dishonest. Qin Feiyang said. Understood. The five-clawed golden dragon laughed. Bastard. Hui glared at the two of them. Feng Daji snickered. It turned out that Hui also had a nemesis. Whoosh. After waiting for a while, the axe, the sunset bow, and the other 6 divine artifacts also returned. Next to the 6 divine artifacts, there were a large pile of interspatial rings, and interspatial rings floating in the air, like a small hill. This is your harvest. Qin Feiyang was surprised. That's right. The Sunset Bow's artifact spirit said proudly. Qin Feiyang quickly asked, Is there a 7th grade divine elixir fire? 7th grade divine elixir fire? I really didn't pay attention to this matter. The artifact spirit said. Qin Feiyang looked at Hui and the other two. We didn't pay attention to it either. After we caught them all, we rushed to the next city. But I don't think there is a 7th grade elixir fire. Even if there is, it's with the Chief Pavilion Master. Feng Daji said. Qin Feiyang nodded. Last time, the Treasure Pavilion's manager said that the highest grade of elixir fire and elixir furnace was 8th grade divine elixir fire. And 7th grade divine elixir fire and elixir furnace were also considered top-notch. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be at ease to leave such treasures elsewhere. Although there may not be elixir fire, there must be a lot of legendary divine artifacts. Hui said. That's for sure. Qin Feiyang nodded. When he was on the 10th floor of the treasure pavilion in Holy Dragon City, he saw a lot of legendary divine artifacts and divine techniques. Okay then, go to the Black Tortoise realm and give these treasures to the Fire Lotus. Then you can go into seclusion. After this seclusion, you can only see me when I come back from the Nether King's hell. Don't miss me too much. Qin Feiyang smiled. Stop being so narcissistic. Who would miss you? The five-clawed golden dragon sneered. That's right. Without you we can live comfortably. Hui said. Haha. Qin Feiyang laughed and sent the 3 of them and the 10 heaven-defying divine artifacts to the Black Tortoise realm. He waited outside alone for the mermaid princess and the others. Chapter 2568. Time passed slowly. Qin Feiyang frowned when he did not see the mermaid princess and the others. Was the chief pavilion master playing tricks? But that did not make sense. Even the dragons did not dare to confront him, let alone a mere treasure pavilion. Besides, this was the chief pavilion master and the Beast Emperor's fault. There was no reason for them to go against him. Swoosh. Suddenly, silhouettes appeared above Black Tortoise Mountain. Qin Feiyang looked up, and his eyes were filled with excitement. Were they not the lovers and companions he had been thinking about day and night? Dan Wangkai, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, Chui Li Willow Tree, Blood Qilin, Golden Leopard, Thunder Leopard, Yu Huang. There were also Tantai Li Qin Rushuang, Mermaid Princess, Feiyang. Boss. Young Master. When everyone saw Qin Feiyang, their expressions were also incomparably excited, and they immediately surrounded Qin Feiyang. Feiyang, I thought I would never see you again. The mermaid princess threw herself into Qin Feiyang's arms. I'll take care of everything. Don't be afraid. Qin Feiyang's heart ached. The mermaid princess nodded. Damn it. Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast are inhumane. How dare they imprison us? Don't worry. Revenge is a dish best served cold. They'll fall into our hands sooner or later. That's right. We'll let them know why the flowers are so red. The Blood Qilin, Thunder Leopard, Golden Leopard, and Yu Huang gnashed their teeth. Qin Feiyang looked at the beasts and nodded. Don't worry. That day will come. Let's not talk about that first. Young Master, I heard that the castle and Black Tortoise realm have merged, and the time formation has become 100 years a day. Is that true? Zhao Tailai and the others looked at Qin Feiyang expectantly. Qin Feiyang smiled. Of course it's true. Why else would I ask you to come back? Haha. Then hurry up and enter. I'm just about to break through to the half-step 9 heavens realm. The Blood Kirin said excitedly. Half-step 9th heavens realm? Qin Feiyang froze, and he looked at the Blood Kirin. This guy had actually broken through to the great circle of the paramount god level. Zhao Tailai and the others, as well as Yu Huang and the other beasts, were all perfected transcendent gods. It seems that you've gained quite a lot from the dragon-slaying palace over the years. Qin Feiyang smiled. That's a must. Ever since we separated in the Heavenly Dragon Sea, we've been in seclusion every day, and we've never run around. We're just afraid of embarrassing you. Lei Bao and the other beasts chuckled. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Feiyang, I'm really sorry. I didn't protect them well. Tantai Li looked at Qin Feiyang with an apologetic expression. Great-grandmother, this has nothing to do with you. The fault lies with the chief pavilion master and the Beast Emperor. Selfishness and jealousy are too strong. Hold on. The Cloud Sovereign and the Beast Emperor you mentioned just now, could it be them? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. Tantai Li nodded. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. These two are not qualified to be on the same level as the 2 ancestors. But they are the sovereigns of the dragon-slaying palace after all. Both of your ancestors hoped that we could bury the hatchet, and bury the hatchet. Don't affect the development of the dragon-slaying palace. Your 2 ancestors also asked me to apologize to you on their behalf, for not telling you at the first moment. Tantai Li said, I'm not such a calculative person. As long as you're fine, Anything can be discussed. Besides, they've paid a heavy price this time. Qin Feiyang smiled. Needless to say, the treasure pavilion's reputation was damaged, and they'd lost a lot of treasures. As for the Beast Emperor, his physical body was destroyed, and his soul was destroyed. For a supreme expert like the Beast Emperor, it wasn't just a great loss of vitality, but it was almost fatal. It would take tens of thousands of years just to rebuild his physical body and condense his soul. Tens of thousands of years was a long time for an imperishable realm expert. Tantai heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Qin Feiyang's reply. Qin Feiyang suddenly looked at Qin Rishuang, and then at Tantai. He teased, "Great-grandmother, I'm surprised. Why are you and your mother here? Why? Can't we come?" Qin Rishuang raised her eyebrows. "Yes, of course you can. I'm just a little curious. Why don't you stay with your ancestors?" Qin Feiyang said, "This is why your ancestors asked us to come." After this incident, they realized that leaving us in the dragon-slaying palace wasn't the safest way. So they asked us to come to you. Actually, before entering the dragon-slaying palace, I didn't expect the situation to be so complicated. Tantai sighed. "We're all family. Isn't it too serious to say that we'll come to you? My door is always open for you. As for the dragon-slaying palace, I think that indecisiveness will only lead to trouble. My two ancestors should be more decisive," Qin Feiyang said. If they continued to let these two ambitious people stay in the dragon-slaying palace, something would happen sooner or later. It's not as simple as you think. Your ancestors have their concerns too. They asked Supreme Cloud and Supreme Cloud to join the dragon-slaying palace because they were like-minded. But who would have thought that after the dragon-slaying palace finally stabilized, they would want to seize power again? Supreme Cloud and Supreme Cloud know the dragon-slaying palace like the back of their hands. If we push them to the dragon's side now, it will do us no good at all. Besides, the dragon-slaying palace can't do without their support now. Especially Supreme Cloud. As the chief pavilion master of the treasure pavilion, she contributed more than anyone else when the dragon-slaying palace was first established. Because she basically provided all the resources the dragon-slaying palace needed. So what your two ancestors mean is to try to stabilize them and persuade them to truly be of one mind with us. Tantai said. I'm afraid it'll be difficult. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Where there's a will, there's a way. Tantai said with a smile. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, if my two ancestors really want to keep them, then there's only one choice, and that is to control them by force. Control them? Tantai was stunned for a moment, then shook her head and smiled bitterly. It was indeed this kid's style. We'll talk about this later. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the current Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang smiled. Boom. However, before he finished speaking, a monstrous murderous aura suddenly surged in the sky above. Following closely, a world-destroying divine power descended from the sky and blasted toward Qin Feiyang and the others below. Someone's there. Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked. At the same time, a wave of pressure surged over, and the group of people was immediately imprisoned in the void. This pressure? It's a supreme expert. Qin Feiyang's expression changed. The sudden arrival of the pressure and the sudden appearance of the divine power. This was obviously a carefully planned murder. They wanted to kill all of them here. Who is it? Qin Feiyang roared in his heart. However, he was unable to break free from the confinement of the pressure, and he couldn't even enter the ancient castle or the Black Tortoise world. The divine power was aggressive, like the might of the heavens. Everyone couldn't help but feel despair. I can't die. Everyone can't. Break for me. Qin Feiyang struggled frantically. However, the pressure was beyond his imagination. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break it. They could only watch helplessly as the divine power blasted toward them. If you want to kill him, do you have my permission? But suddenly, a tender voice sounded. Following closely, a little boy who looked like a porcelain doll appeared in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. Wasn't this the little boy? Clang! The little boy raised his hand and waved. The axe, the sunset bow, and other 11 heaven-defying divine weapons all appeared in an instant. At that moment, The 11 heaven-defying divine weapons released a destructive aura that surged toward the divine power. With a loud bang, the divine power immediately disintegrated. The pressure that imprisoned Qin Feiyang and the others also dissipated in an instant. Qin Feiyang's mind moved and immediately sent the mermaid princess and the others to the black tortoise world. Then he grabbed the axe and soared into the sky. Immediately, he saw a black figure darting into the distant forest like lightning, disappearing without a trace. Where do you think you're going? Qin Feiyang immediately prepared to chase. Don't chase. The other party came prepared and won't give you a chance, the little boy said. Qin Feiyang clenched his hand and finally put away his killing intent. He lowered his head to look at the little boy and said, "Thank you." If the little boy hadn't appeared in time, he and the mermaid princess and the others would definitely not have been spared. The little boy waved his little hand and asked, "Do you know who it is? This aura is very unfamiliar." Qin Feiyang frowned and suddenly looked at the little boy and asked, "Wait, how did you come out?" "Nonsense. Even you can freely enter and exit the black tortoise world, let alone me." The little boy rolled his eyes. Qin Feiyang paused and frowned. "What role do you play in the black tortoise world?" He had always thought that he was the only one in the world who could freely enter and exit the black tortoise world. "Me. It's a secret." The little boy grinned and disappeared without a trace. Qin Feiyang scratched his head and followed into the black tortoise world. He saw the mermaid princess and the others gathered in front of the castle gate with lingering fear. "Feiyang, are you okay?" Tantai Li asked with concern. "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang shook his head and scanned everyone. Seeing that everyone was fine, he let out a sigh of relief and asked, "Did you see that divine power just now?" "No." The group shook their heads. Since it was a premeditated sneak attack, he definitely wouldn't have given you the chance to see through his identity. But it's not hard to guess. Who knows that we're in the Black Tortoise Mountain? At this time, Hua Yi, the five-clawed golden dragon, Feng Daji, and Fire Lotus walked over. "Who knows that we're in the Black Tortoise Mountain?" Qin Feiyang whispered. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He raised his head and looked at Hua Yi and the others. Chief Pavilion Master. Because at that time, he only told the Chief Pavilion Master that he would meet up with the Mermaid Princess and the others at the Black Tortoise Mountain. That's right. This woman is not ordinary vicious. In the blink of an eye, she planned such a terrifying murder. Fortunately, that little brat can also leave the Black Tortoise world. Otherwise, you would have been doomed this time, Hua Yi said. Chapter 2569. I'm going to send a message to my father. We can't let such a sinister person live. Qin Rushwang said angrily. We can't let this go so easily. It's already too much for them to spy on us and imprison us in the Dragon Slayer Palace. Now they want to kill us. They're so vicious. They'll only be a disaster if they stay in the Dragon Slayer Palace. Zhao Tailai and the others felt indignant. Then you should contact the ancestors, Qin Feiyang said to Qin Rushwang and the others. He then turned to Hua Yi and the five-clawed golden dragon and said, Come with me. Hua Yi and the five-clawed golden dragon nodded. The mermaid princess hurriedly asked, Feiyang, where are you going? You have to pay the price for your wrongdoings. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and left the Black Tortoise realm with Hua Yi and the five-clawed golden dragon. He opened the altar and descended above the treasure pavilion in the Holy Dragon City. The sky was still dark. However, the onlookers had dispersed not long ago. Boom! Qin Feiyang released his aura and shocked everyone. This seems to be Qin Feiyang's aura. He's back again. I think he's still in the treasure pavilion. Let's go take a look. Everyone rushed to the sky and looked above the treasure pavilion. It was indeed Qin Feiyang. Whoosh! At the same time, a figure flew out from the treasure pavilion. It was the manager of the treasure pavilion. When he saw Qin Feiyang and the other two, the manager's expression changed. He smiled obsequiously and said, May I know why you've come to my treasure pavilion again? Qin Feiyang glanced at the manager and said, Raise this place to the ground. What? The manager's expression changed. The five-clawed golden dragon immediately attacked. Get out of the treasure pavilion! The manager quickly retreated to the side and shouted at the treasure pavilion below. Although the treasure pavilion was closed, there were guards guarding it at all times. If he didn't warn them, these guards would definitely die. Whoosh! As soon as the manager finished speaking, more than a dozen guards rushed out of the treasure pavilion. Boom! As soon as the guards left, the treasure pavilion collapsed. Qin Feiyang, don't go too far. Seeing this scene, the manager of the treasure pavilion roared furiously. The one who has gone too far is your chief pavilion master. Today, I will make the treasure pavilion disappear from the divine prefecture. Let's go to the next place. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. He opened the altar and brought Hua Yi and the five-clawed golden dragon away. What the hell is going on? The manager of the treasure school was burning with anxiety. He took out an image crystal and sent a message to the chief pavilion master. What? He's back? The chief pavilion master was enraged when he heard this. Yes. I wonder which city they went to. My lord, you have to think of a solution quickly. Otherwise, with Qin Feiyang's methods, I'm afraid our treasure pavilion will be doomed today. The manager of the treasure pavilion said anxiously. I'll deal with it right away. The chief pavilion master said gloomily and turned off the image crystal. Swish! In the sky above a certain city, 3 figures appeared. One of them waved his hand, and a surge of divine power surged out. With a loud bang, a building in the center of the city collapsed on the spot. This building was the treasure pavilion of the city. After the treasure pavilion was destroyed, the 3 figures opened the altar and disappeared. It seems to be Qin Feiyang. What's wrong with him? Didn't I hear that his grudge with the treasure pavilion has been resolved? Why is he attacking the treasure pavilion again? Also, what grudge does he have with the treasure pavilion? Everyone was discussing. For the people of the major cities in the north, this was destined to be a sleepless night. Feiyang, father wants you to come in. When Qin Feiyang and the other 2 destroyed the 4th pavilion, Qin Rishuang's voice suddenly rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He brought Hua Yi and the five-clawed golden dragon into the ancient castle, and saw that everyone was gathered in the castle hall. In the void, 3 figures were suspended. They were Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang, the chief pavilion master. The chief pavilion master's face was still as unrecognizable as before. As soon as Qin Batian saw Qin Feiyang appear, he immediately said, Feiyang, this is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and pointed at the chief pavilion master's shadow. She's the only one who knows that I'm at Black Tortoise Mountain. Who else could it be? Don't get too excited. Listen to me. When you destroyed the treasure pavilion, Lu Xingyang and I also secretly went to Black Tortoise Mountain. Judging from the remnant divine power aura, this person is not from the Dragon Slayer Palace. Qin Batian said. Of course he's not from the Dragon Slayer Palace, because he's one of her people. Qin Feiyang pointed at the chief pavilion master angrily. Qin Feiyang, don't slander me. Although I do hate you, I won't resort to such despicable tricks, the chief pavilion master said angrily. You even spied on Zhao Tailai and the others. What else can't you do? Qin Feiyang sneered. I didn't do it, so I didn't do it, the chief pavilion master said. Feiyang, calm down first. This person is indeed not Supreme Cloud's subordinate, because I know all of Supreme Cloud's subordinates. Qin Batian shook his head. What if this person has changed her appearance? Maybe it's even her. Because we haven't seen this person's true face. Qin Feiyang said. Appearance can be changed, but the aura of divine power can't be changed. Unless you take that kind of divine pill to change the power of bloodline like you and me. But I'm the only one who has this pill. And I've never given this pill to anyone except you. You can't be suspecting that I'm the one who wants to kill you, right? Qin Batian said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Are you sure that I'm the only one you've given this kind of pill to? Of course. I've only refined a total of 3 pills since it was developed. I've taken 2, and you've taken 1. Who else would have one? Qin Batian smiled helplessly. Then, Qin Feiyang frowned, looked at the chief pavilion master and asked, It's really not you. Nonsense. You're the descendant of Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang. Tantai Li and her daughter are Qin Baishan's wife and daughter. The mermaid princess is also the descendant of the mermaid emperor. You have such a big brain. Why don't you think about it? Would I dare to kill you? If I did, I would have killed them in the dragon-slaying palace. Why would I imprison them and wait until now? The chief pavilion master said angrily. I don't think so. Huai sneered. What do you mean? The chief pavilion master looked at Huai. If you killed them in the dragon-slaying palace, you would have to face our anger, so you wouldn't dare. But a sneak attack is another matter. If the sneak attack was successful, with your means, you could completely clear your name. Let's take a step back and say that even if you fail, just like now, you have a reason to wash your hands clean. As for the person who attacked us, who knows if he's the killer you've been hiding all this time, and that even Qin Batian and the others don't know about. Huai said lightly. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang and the others nodded. Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. It sounded like there was no flaw at all. Was it really someone sent by the chief pavilion master? The chief pavilion master was burning with anxiety and said, I really didn't. What do I have to do to make you believe me? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said, It's not difficult for me to believe you. What do you want to do? The chief pavilion master raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang said word by word, Let me read your memory. That's right. As long as you're willing to let Qin Feiyang read your memory, we'll believe you. Huai said. The chief pavilion master said flatly, That's impossible. I'm a sovereign. But before the chief pavilion master finished, Qin Batian said, Supreme Cloud, this is the only way to solve this matter. You, Supreme Cloud glared at Qin Batian. I know your concerns. You can rest assured. If it's really not you, I'll immediately let Qin Feiyang remove his control over you. And apologize to you personally, Qin Batian said. Supreme Cloud's expression was uncertain. Supreme Cloud, isn't it just to prove it? Since you didn't do it, what are you afraid of? Lu Xingyang said. Okay, I agree. But if it's not me, then I'll make the two of you kneel down and apologize to me. And Qin Feiyang must hand over the Sunset Divine Bow and the other 10 heaven-defying divine weapons to the Dragon Slayer Palace. Supreme Cloud looked at Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang and said. Hearing this, Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang looked at each other with a trace of melancholy in their eyes. Qin Feiyang and the others also looked at each other. Such calmness and confidence. Was it really not her? Or was she just pretending to be calm? If you dare to agree, I'll immediately let Qin Feiyang read my memory. Supreme Cloud looked at Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang aggressively. This, Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang were hesitant. Qin Rishuang said telepathically, Feiyang, what should we do now? They didn't expect Supreme Cloud to make such a request. If Supreme Cloud had really sent someone to assassinate them, it would be fine. But if not, the loss would not be small. Besides, the reason the Sunset Divine Bow and other divine artifacts followed Qin Feiyang was because of the origin of the Black Tortoise world. They themselves would not agree to join the Dragon Slayer Palace. But they were extremely unwilling to give up on Supreme Cloud's memory. Phew! Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked at Supreme Cloud. Don't make things difficult for our ancestors. If it's really not you, I'll kneel and kowtow to you in apology. All right. Supreme Cloud nodded and asked. Then what about the 10 divine artifacts? I really can't agree to let the 10 divine artifacts join the Dragon Slayer Palace. Because they are unwilling to join the Dragon Slayer Palace. You know the temper of divine artifacts. If you force them, it will only be counterproductive. But you can change your request. As long as I can do it, I'll agree. Qin Feiyang said. Supreme Cloud shook his head. I only want the 10 divine artifacts. No discussion. Are you deliberately making things difficult for Qin Feiyang? Are you doing this because you have a guilty conscience? Are you trying to use this to make us give up the idea of reading your memory? Huai sneered. I didn't do it. What's there to be guilty about? In short, as long as you agree to my conditions, I'll let you read my memory without a word. I won't resist. Supreme Cloud said faintly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.